Welcome ASLers to another episode of Tactical Tuesday. This Tactical Tuesday is a little different. What happened was we had, I think, 4 or 5 different log files. So we had a lot of submissions, a couple from the Russian ASL group, a couple local guys, a couple new guys. So this is sort of like a 2-episode breakdown of what we covered in reviewing all the games, reviewing how the players approach the game, their setup strategies, their offensive strategies, and you'll see how all of that comes together based upon all the different players' game styles. You'll see some really crazy things happening, and you'll see some things happening in one game and not in another. And so taking that into account is the reason why we're doing these replay analysis and conversation, so that you can see that each and every game, even though it's a very small game, can be very different. And we see that a lot in many games. So when you see, a rule record here or there, and, it's like 12-1, but then the one may have been somebody that chose a completely different strategy and won the game, or everyone just chose the same, funneled strategy. Sometimes that doesn't work. And so you'll see a lot of differences here. Compare, contrast them, see what you like, see what you can incorporate in your games, and then we'll go from there. But, as the games of the months progress, the more submissions, the better. Therefore, we have more information to draw from to see the different variety of players out there. And if you're interested in the ASL game of the month, you're free to join in on those. I'm picking scenarios that aren't overly complex. Most of them have a singular mission. Not a lot of bling to them per se. You don't have to worry about 15 different types of units and things like that. Try to keep it nice and trim so it can encourage ASL players to play the oldies and goodies maybe, or something they haven't developed before. But essentially each of those scenarios will have a singular sort of rules topic or rules focus. Maybe it's a cavalry scenario. Maybe it's a crossing a bridge scenario, or an exit scenario, infantry, which is stray or strays. Exit scenario perhaps with vehicles, price of impatience. So they're all based upon a single application of the rules. And also in price of impatience, no tanks there. There are armored fighting vehicles, but there are no tanks. So infantry can attack those tanks, especially if they're in a stone village community, can get those things done. That's what we're doing here in the Tactical Tuesday replay analysis. That's what we're doing ASL Recon analysis. We're taking scenarios from each of those systems and we're peeling them apart based upon your plays. Hypotheticals are hypotheticals. Oh, you can go here, you can go there. Yeah, let's see it. Let's see your strategy in action. Let's see that particular strategy start to fail and you adapt to it. That's what we're worried about. If you can adapt to different situations, or find situations that, oh, hey, this opened up right at the last moment, and boom, we cut off to the side over there. That's what ASL is all about, is adapting to situations, adapting to what you know and what you can deal with, and then try to exploit those during the game. All right, and having fun all the while. All right, so again, this is going to be a little longer than normal session, but essentially it's a 4.5-hour session condensed down to about 2.5 hours. So cut off some of the stuff, left some questions in, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to exhibit the different scenarios that you guys can watch. All right, let's get to it. So this is the scenario where pretty much the allies just kind of rush the tanks off. But just take a look. First of all, again, the bog dice rolls. I mean, for the attempt to go through the trees, obviously it's a +3 modifier. If you're using half of your movement points to enter the location, unfortunately it's a +3 modifier. So like a 9 or more, you're gonna get bogged. Luckily, most of these vehicles, or at least the vehicles that he's taking through the woods, have low ground pressure, so you don't get that extra +1. So for all intents and purposes, it changes that 9 to an 8, and that's a lot more dice rolls. So even though it's a +1, you've got, I mean, that's a ton more dice rolls on that he has to avoid. So 9, pretty not too bad to avoid. But if you don't have that normal ground pressure, you're going to bog on an 8 or more. Not the best thing in the world you want to do. Most vehicles do not have the little square in the corner of the upper left of the vehicle, which means it's got low ground pressure. And so take advantage of that. If you guys are entering a bog situation or something like that, a lot of times you can get away with like changing covered arc in woods and things like that. Vehicle covered arc in woods, because your normal ground pressure, you don't get that much of +1. So you just bog at a 12, which is, good luck with that. But anyway, he does bog a vehicle, unfortunately, because again, on Dutch trucks, we need to get 12, I think 12 victory points off the map. And vehicles are 5. Malfunction main armaments are 4 for the vehicle. And squads and leaders and such, you guys should know what those points are. 2s, 1s, and modifiers. So he's blown by over here, and I'm not sure why he revealed that unit. Maybe he lost concealment. And again, what we covered last week, and this is what Scott had mentioned before, that he didn't think he used the mortars as anti-tank weapons, and you'll see this in this particular game. He is point blank on these guys. I mean, there are motion, so he's not going to get the point blank modifier. But he chooses not to fire the mortar, which is fine, because if there's going to stop there, he could always fire later. And all these units, all the other vehicles are moving into position. He keeps these guys in a clump, just so, because the Dutch trucks are restricted by movement on a per turn basis. They have to do a task check, and they add a -1 modifier for every vehicle that is adjacent to it at the beginning of the movement phase. So here he does, and unfortunately, this is kind of like the story of Scott's game. He mounts the mortar turn 1, movement phase 1. That's a big deal. I mean, it really is a big deal. I mean, I think it had mouth of 12. I think, I'm not sure. So you've got the slow vehicles. These are the big boys over here, the big nasty looking. They look like battleships. On the left-hand side, they're very slow moving. Those are easy to catch up. The very fast-moving vehicles on the right-hand side. Again, we've got a medium machine gun. I think he's firing them MG at the squads and units, where I think simply because of the speed of the vehicles, the MGs need to be, everything you've got that's a support weapon needs to be an anti-tank weapon first, primarily, versus just your AT gun and your infantry howitzer, because you're just not going to get the shots off, and these guys are going to be moving too fast. And remember, if they were 360 mounts, if they were quick traverse, that'd be a different story. But since we're non-turreted, if you have to change your turret covered arc, you're not going to hit these vehicles. You're just not. This one's a +1. These guys are +2, +1. Add motion. Add 3 for moving, changing covered arc. That's a 7 right there, and that's with no hindrances. So you're gonna need a 3 to hit them. It's just not good odds. So you've got to try and make use of your other items. Our mortar guy gets pinned, and I think he fires. I'm not sure who he fires on. Maybe he kept concealment. Oh, he fires on an infantry unit, not using the mortars as an anti-tank weapon. Again, I think Scott didn't realize the effectiveness of mortars as anti-tank weapons. Not super, but a 4 or 5 is pretty much the kill number, what we need in this scenario. And he did mouth 1. And the other weapons do have breakdown 11. These guys are getting pinned. So, and then so it's a very conservative approach on the right-hand side, all vehicles, and then he supports that with a little bit of infantry as well. So he prep fires. Not a lot of Japanese in the front on the left-hand side. No, vehicle just kind of like burns by him from this location here to try and get those easy victory points. And unfortunately, when you simply just move, he's got 2 vehicles off already. I think it already skipped it. He's got one at the top right. He's got one of those marks, those VCL 1936s. It's like the British Mark IV or Mark something like that. Anyway, very fast. He missed him, happened to get off. Same thing over here. He missed him. He's just behind him now. So that's pretty much 10 points. And then this guy just kind of follows suit. And again, medium machine gun. He doesn't have the mortar here. The light might be somewhere. You've got to take shots at these vehicles, especially at the front and rear, or the sides and rear, where it's gonna have the zero armor. You definitely want to take some shots at those guys. The medium just has it. But that's okay. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the effectiveness of your support weapons against early war or very lightly armored vehicles, and that's just normal. That's just not used to facing that, or playing a lot of late war scenarios. Like, you've got Shermans, you've got T-34s, armor 6 and above. I mean, the machine guns just don't even come into play. So if you play a lot of those, you're just never going to think of using the LMGs as anti-tank weapons. It takes a little while to do such a thing. It's sort of like routing forward to a better spot. It's just something that you probably don't do very often, but when the opportunity presents itself, you really have to take advantage of it. And he's just picking stuff up. He's just kind of the 8-0 is trying to stop as many infantry units as possible. Same thing on the side over here. But we've got problem is we've got 3 vehicles on the left-hand side. Infantry gun that just doesn't have the rate of fire to even deal with that over there. He does spin. I think he does kill somebody. I think it's in the prep fire phase. The infantry are reacting, but there's not much more we could do. Not saying that he didn't, but if he did fire them, it would have made a difference, because it's kind of tough to hit. If he pushed through, it could make a slight difference. So I think this was just the end of they finished out the turn, I think. Yeah, oh yeah, wow, he actually got two of them blowing up, it looks like. And look at the medium machine gun, main armament, and yeah, the other vehicle gets off. So he did destroy 3 vehicles. I mean, that's pretty impressive for not, again, even this scenario. What turn is it right here? Turn 4. So even though the vehicles blew by him early, you got that one vehicle in the upper left, the other one in the upper right, and then he made a push to get off the board. Pretty much, I mean, this gun here, and I'm not sure if this one hit it. I don't think this one hit it, because they're all destroyed over here. This gun did a really good job, or whatever destroyed these guys. He still got 3 vehicles, which is kind of impressive, considering he didn't use any of his mortars and very few of his light machine guns as anti-tank weapons. To get that many vehicles destroyed, only using your 5/8" counters, I think is pretty good, to be honest with you. I think his infantry, I don't think his infantry could have gone off. This might have been the end of the movement phase. Maybe not, but he's got lots of Japanese infantry that can get in front of the way of the Allied infantry. And that's a recurring theme in this one here, which goes back to the point. I mean, look how much infantry got off. None. I don't think anybody got off. And he's got one more turn to move. And so even though they're not considered green, these are considered essentially non-inexperienced units. But I think they just wanted to reduce their range. So to give the Japanese a slight advantage, having a 4 range over the 3 range. And so the Japanese can maintain that, hopefully maintain or take advantage of the 4 to 8 hex distance firing. And it does make a big difference in a lot of scenarios. And this one, it could be one of them. But again, even though I think Scott thought he got blown out, he didn't use all the tools that he had available to him. He just simply didn't know about them. And I think he did pretty well even with that. Like I said, none of the infantry getting off. The vehicles, if he only dealt with the AT guns, dealing with those, he still got 3. And the one bogged way in the back, he's still there, bogged. So not too bad. I mean, to be honest with you, even though it may have felt like a blowout, there are successes, considering he was essentially handicapped. The next one, let's go to Caesar and Craig's. I think this is a good one. We can cover something else here. So see, I think whoever, I'm not sure who did this, but these are really cool pictures. So you can go ahead and sync with me. Whoever did this, they put the Marmon Harrington, which is the armored car in this one here. You got an image of that one. You've got the Combat Light Series 4 and the other Combat Tank Light Series, I guess the other tank. So pretty cool images of what these tanks look like. Very small tanks. That thing's like a go-kart, the middle one. It's just really weird. It's just really small. And so, again, the defense set up in this particular scenario, very similar to the other one. It kind of spread out almost. I mean, it looks almost exactly the same. So very similar setup. It might be the same in all the scenarios. I don't know. The entry is a little bit different for the allies. They don't have anybody going off to the right hand side. So let's see how this one develops based upon the entry here. And there are a couple things that we need to cover right in the beginning here. So the slowest guys are jamming right up in the middle. Points his turret at the unit in the stone building. That's a stone building in Z5. So very good defense. Fast tank on the right hand side. Now this tank is going to enter this location here, and this is what the discussion I was having at the beginning of the session. So he enters the location. He has to lose. Starter kit rules, he loses concealment. ASL rules, you don't automatically lose concealment when a vehicle enters your location. So that is to me, that is a significant difference in the two systems. I looked it up. It's like, why is he losing his concealment? Am I missing something? And it just says when a unit enters your location, you lose concealment. It doesn't say infantry unit. In ASL, it says infantry cavalry specifically. They bounce off, and then you lose concealment. Vehicles, you have to essentially pass a patsy to keep your concealment, or you could lose it voluntarily. If you don't pass the patsy, then you become pinned, and I think you still lose it. But I have to check the details on that. But you do have an opportunity to keep your concealment. And again, operationally and how you conduct the game will change based upon that. So the vehicle enters this location. What options? Go ahead.
If that vehicle was in bypass around that woods, would the Japanese lose concealment?
If he ends the turn in bypass, it would. If he passes through the location, he will not. If he ends in bypass, it would.
Okay.
Which to me is kind of, it should be the opposite. But I didn't write the rule book, and they're never going to change it based on my opinion. So but yeah, so he enters that location. So what options does this infantry unit have? First of all, he had a mortar, right? So technically, if he probably thought he was going to drive by him, which was fine. So I'm not knocking anything about him. Oh, he could have fired a mortar 1x range. I would have thought that he would have driven by him. Pure and simple. Simply because if he bogs, that tank may never get off the game. I mean, he only has, it's possible that he may not get off. So, options for this infantry unit, gentlemen. What is he? What can that guy do anything? Can the infantry unit do anything?
You can do well. I think they just call it reaction. I think they call it reaction fire in SK. I mean, it's called combat reaction fire, I think, in ASL. But so he can attempt. He can take a patsy, and if he does so, then he gets to attempt to take out the tank in close combat.
Right. And so exactly. And so, how many movement points did this tank expend in this location?
He had to expend half.
Right. So this guy spent 9.
Yeah.
So when you conduct a close combat reaction fire, it's just like any other fire. You could first fire, subsequent, final protective fire. So how many attempts can this infantry unit have? Now take a look at the situation. How many attempts can this unit have to destroy this vehicle? Potential.
Well, in potential, he could take up to 9.
9 attempts to destroy this vehicle. Now, you say, oh, it's bullshit, Stu. There's no way. This is where we have to focus on our nationality distinctions. First fire comes and goes, right? Say misses. Subsequent first fire comes and goes. Say he misses. Final protective fire, because once he passes the patsy, he doesn't have to do another patsy for that vehicle. Okay? So he continues to attack. What happens in final protective fire? It's his third shot, mind you. So when we're subsequent first firing or final protective fire in close combat reaction fire against a vehicle, what is our close combat value? Well, first of all, what's the close combat value of this squad in that location in EE7? That's the first thing we need to know.
5.
Yeah, it's a 5. Squads are 5, and everything else I always forget, and I have to look on the chart. So squads I know are 5 because half squads you just get shot to hell anyway. So he's a base 5. So his first shot is going to be a 5. Second shot's going to be what? So subsequent first fire. Let's say I'm going to fire on you again. What the hell? Boom. What is his close combat value?
Well, technically you add 1 to your roll, but technically it's a 4, right? No, I'm sorry. No, I think your CCV value actually does go down by 1.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. Okay, it's not right. That's right.
So we're looking at 4, assuming he stopped, right? Assuming he parks there and he stopped. He's not in motion. He stopped in that location, and so now it's going to be a 4. And so when you final protective fire, what's your close combat value going to be?
I think it's still a 4, isn't it?
Right. It's same thing as essentially subsequent first fire penalties.
Right.
What happens?
Well,
what happens with this unit? Because remember, when you're final protective firing, what's the penalties? What's the penalty for this unit? Morale check. When the green unit final protective fires and he rolls an 8, what happens?
He becomes a half squad. Oh, no, he breaks. Right, he breaks.
Okay.
Yeah.
When this Japanese unit fails a final protective fire, what happens?
He stripes.
He stripes. And then he attacks again. What's his close combat value? What is a striped unit?
It's the same as a full squad.
Exactly. Exactly. And so let's say he fails again. He rolls another 8. What happens?
Then he
goes to a half squad.
becomes a half squad, right? Then he becomes a half squad.
He becomes a half squad. So he could fire again. And let's say he fails again.
Now, as a half squad, it's not a.
It's now a 3.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
It's a base 3 plus 1 because he's subsequent for upon a protective fire in 100 yards. So he needs what to just immobilize this vehicle?
Snake eyes.
Snake eyes. So this unit, let's say he says, "Oh, screw it. I have had bad luck. You know, it's just one of those days. I'm not gonna, he's gonna roll snake eyes." So he chooses not to do it, but he'd have to roll another 8 to break. So again, the difference between the Japanese versus all the other schmucks on the planet is that unit, when that vehicle entered his location, he had first fire, subsequent first fire for freedom, right? No penalties. Final protective fire that he could fail, another final protective fire that he can fail, and a potential snake eyes to boot after on his 5th roll. So he has 4 essentially free attacks that he could take on that vehicle to get a 4 or 5. His 5 is the first shot, 4s for the other ones.
Right.
So 1 5, 3 4s. But
I think there is also kind of a distinction that I think we have to draw. So the question would be is whether the tank is moving or not when he's in that hex. So if you attack the tank, let's say, and he doesn't bog because it looked like he rolled a 4 or 5, so he didn't bog.
Right.
So he goes in there. So at that point, if you want to attack those 9 times, you have to attack it as a moving vehicle because it hasn't expended a stop point yet.
Right, which would be another +1.
Right, which would be another +1.
Right.
So you have to add +1. But then if he stops, if he says, all right, if you decide not to attack him and he stops, that's only 1 MP, so you only get the 1 attack.
Right. But but with those close combat, like let's say he does that, then you still have that potential of those free attacks. They may be low, but everything you have is going to be a low to kill number.
Oh, right, but you still have to make the choice,
Right.
You still have to make the choice as to whether you want to attack the moving vehicle or wait until it stops or whatever.
Right.
It's still something you want to take into account, I guess, when you're thinking about it. So,
And if he stopped at that location, what can you do then? Say he's still considered moving for that turn in the defensive fire. Say you didn't fire on him in the defensive fire phase, you could attack, but you only get the one shot.
right.
Because it's final fire. You just put a final fire marker on him at that point. Yeah, so I just want to show the distinction between, so if one tank ran through and then another tank ran through, this unit, it takes a lot to actually break the Japanese unit. All the other units are going to break pretty quickly. Pretty quickly.
Stu,
Mhm.
quick question. Putting aside Japanese, I guess, but so why in SK do you run a tank into a hex with a unit? There's no overrun, right? And unless you get, I don't know if you get triple point blank bounding fire or
You
what, but
Yeah,
why? What's
you
the
get-
rationale?
It's halved and tripled. Plus, there's the advantage of. I think
They
the reason
still
he moved
fire
it in there
out.
is this way. This way, his vehicle would prevent me from firing outside of that hex. So then he's got freedom of movement for his infantry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's the risk, right? There's the risk that he may lose that vehicle. But that's the risk he's willing to take because he's got a whole bunch of infantry coming on that side, maybe some guys in the middle. And it kind of looks like the gist there is it looks like he's getting real up and close and personal to these guys because these guys don't look like they have support weapons, so he's probably not too worried about it. And, we have lots of machine guns on our allied vehicles. But they are in decent terrain, but that is a possibility. And that, again, that's an opportunity the Japanese, hopefully, if they can withstand the firepower being concealed, that they could possibly take advantage of this stop the vehicles next to him. So I just saw this situation here, and I want to roll up on it. And I think I was checking the dice rolls here, and I might be wrong here. So Craig does take a shot at him.
Yeah, I tried once he stopped. I did reaction fire.
Right. Now, on this roll here, technically you have to do the patsy first and then the reaction fire after that. But so what happened on these is on all the ones you did it in this particular scenario, I saw that your close combat roll technically would have been the patsy. You passed them all, but there was just no subsequent roll after that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but that's just, that's, again, gentlemen, this is something you really don't see a lot in some of our games. Because a lot of guys don't want to drive into buildings. You don't need to. You just drive around them. So this is essentially opening your eyes up to, patsy checks. I'm still sketchy on patsy checks because I don't really play with a lot of big armor, or the armor that you do have, you don't want to move into enemy units locations. And so that usually doesn't come into play all too often. Usually it's the advance into your location and attack. So
Question.
Yeah, the reason I didn't do the reason we forgot the patsy was he was already in my hex, so I kind of forgot that even though he's in my hex, I still need to roll the patsy, as opposed
Yeah.
to if I just went into close combat, no patsies required.
Right, that was my question. That if somebody assaults you, you still have to roll a patsy to shoot at them.
assaults you? What do you mean?
Well, it moves into your hex.
Yeah. There's a pre-FE task check on any of those results.
If you're using reaction fire, but if you stop there and I didn't do anything and we go into close combat, I'm already in the hex.
Right, he's already in your hex.
Then I don't need a patsy.
Yeah,
Right.
he's already there. But if you advance into his location, you need a patsy, or as we'll see later on another thing, no patsy required for Banzai units. So Banzai units just move in freely. There's no, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. And that's another key point with the Banzai attack in some of these scenarios where you don't have to worry about that extra dice roll. Although your morale's a little higher, you can always roll a 9 or more. So it's kind of silly at that point. But
So
But
still, I will tell you, I violated my plan a little bit. I fully intended to use the mortar to attack the vehicles, but I didn't expect them to come into my hex. So
yeah, exactly.
I hesitated
And that's what I thought.
took advantage of it.
Yeah. I would have thought he was going to drive right on by as well. There's no problem there. Again, this is just personal choice of fire direction. That's all it is. And I wouldn't have expected when I first saw it. Say, oh shit, what's he doing that for? He's got to get that vehicle off, because you do have other Japanese units in the general vicinity that can get on top of that guy, especially the guy above him, because no infantry is going to stop this guy from moving, and so that's something that the enemy was willing to take. I think you were playing Caesar. That Caesar was
Yes.
willing to take that risk, because he got
He's
tons of
playing very
vehicles.
aggressively.
Yeah, and that's a style. And that's something you definitely have to attest to. So again, he's right. I mean, look at it. 3 moves. He's adjacent to 3 infantry units. This is crazy. So he just goes into this hut here. He just drives into the hut. And I think collapsed. And I think you pass your task check so you don't get pinned. Thank goodness. And then you try your close combat again. That would have been a passed Patsy, so I'm not worried about that. We just we'll just skip that part. It's easy to do. And then Jesus, this got some giant balls. He's just driving into the stone buildings. Maybe he thinks it's a parking garage or something like that. I don't know. But,
I think Caesar's doing a great job in tying up the units.
Yep. But but the one thing, when these guys are stopped, what's the one thing that Caesar is giving Craig at the end of the turn?
Close combat roll.
He's giving him a free close combat roll, and it looks to me that all of these vehicles are stopped.
Yeah.
And so that could be.
And he bogged on that one.
Oh yeah. So in that case, he's immobile. Evens that he would be immobile here, which would give Craig an extra -1. And with the half squad, I mean the half squads have a close combat value of 3. That boosts it to 4. Hey, that's again same kill ratio as some of your mortars and things like that. And so, that's what the risk that you're giving is for the freedom of your infantry movement. You're risking 3 vehicles on turn 1, the potential destruction, and on turn 2 as well, right? Because what happens? Let's see what happens at the end of this turn. Because he's very aggressive. He's just moving guys up there. Look at that. He just burns right up there. Burns right on bother. Now, is there any reason why you didn't take a close combat reaction fire on this one, Craig? On the top guy in D9?
In D9.
I didn't see any dice rolls on that one when he drove through you.
Because he was still moving. He didn't stop, and I let him drive through me.
Okay. All right.
If he came to a stop, then I would have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
With the +1 with moving, I didn't want to.
Yeah, it's difficult.
waste it.
It's difficult to
All
hit.
right, Craig, I have to put in my input. I think Caesar is going to win this one, and I'll shut up.
You never know. This is ASL. So all these tanks are coming forward. Again, he's getting... If there is a machine gun in this location firing on this unit, what is the to-kill value? If I have a light machine gun or a medium machine gun or a HMG, and I'm going to shoot and I hit that tank, what do I need to kill this tank? What's the kill value? That's what we have to understand to know.
Yeah, it's like a 6 or at Jason, it may even be a 7.
Right. How do you get that? How do you get that, Mark?
You just have to look on the tables, which I don't happen to have open.
Ah.
Yeah, I'm looking for my chart.
Okay,
yeah,
look
look
at
at the chart here too.
to kill. Okay. MG's base 4, right?
It's a 6. It's a 6.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
6
And
at range 0 to 1.
yeah, 0 to 1's +2 on that to kill. So that increases the to kill by a huge amount, not just by +2 from a 4 to a 6. That's a lot more rolls that he can make there. And 6 is quite doable. And if he rolls a 6, what happens to that tank? If he rolls exactly a 6 and it hits a turret,
It's recalled.
it's going to be recalled. So for all intents and purposes, a 6 will practically kill him. 6 will practically
Right, yeah,
kill him.
because it's stun. Yeah, it's right.
It's a single man turret.
Oh,
It's- yeah,
stun.
yeah, it's a one-man turret. He can get away with that on the trucks, on the truck movement vehicles, the ones with 8 firepower, because they're just slow man turrets. If you stun this, it's just a regular stun. If you stun the one-mans, they're considered recalled. So he knows there's got to be something in here. So this is a big risk. He does have lots of firepower. I mean, if he fires on him, it's going to be a 6+2. If he's willing to take that shot, willing to risk, hey, well, do what you need to do. He's got a lot more guys, in the vicinity. So again, that's an option that you could take. He is moving. It's +2 size modifier, so it's going to be hard to hit him anyway. So he may just straight up miss him. So
It's actually going to be what? It's actually going to be a 2, right? Because he's concealed. I mean, if he doesn't lose concealment, if he doesn't drop concealment, it's
yeah. If he doesn't drop concealment, the CMG is practically not going to do anything to him.
Right.
And then the Japanese can just hold fire and then take a 6+2 and then jump that vehicle in close combat later if he so chose.
Mhm.
But yeah, he'd have a good chance of ambushing because that no, they're not building his wood. So it's concealed. You have a concealment. So yeah, he could ambush him because it is a concealed unit, and that might give him an extra -1. So that's something that you might want to consider. Especially if you have more than one unit in there. Say you have a squad and then a crew with a machine gun. You might want to fire the crew with the machine gun and then keep the squad concealed to have the squad advance into that location for a potential kill. I mean, you could do lots of things. You do lots of things. And then here comes his infantry again. All these guys are covered. And here's the hip unit. Remember, you're Japanese. Japanese, this is definitely where you know. Japanese may hip 10% of their units. And that's exactly what happened here. Is this unit was initially placed. And the rules are essentially the same thing as guns. Except for you just put some infantry there. And so he's going to fire on that one. And that is a clear shot. That is a open shot.
Yep.
So whether you fire the mortar or the infantry, the actual half squad, that's up to you. For me, I'd probably fire a 2-2 from the half squad, and not fire the mortar. But the choice is yours. That's at 3 units with a leader. That's a lot. But I'm not exactly sure what he fired. I think he.
It looks like he's taking task checks. So.
Yeah. So I think he rolled task checks instead of morale checks. But look, he got a couple pins.
He fired the mortar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, got some task checks. So
Fired
those
the
guys are
mortar.
pinned, slows them down, which is good for the half squad. And these guys start burning up over this way. Looks like this one got blown up. I guess Craig hit him. Yeah, Snake Eyes hit him with the AT gun. Looks like is that a yeah to hit the 8. 8 must have missed him. And then rate of fire. Snake Eyes on the kill. So he did pop that guy. And then he tries to shoot the other guy as well, I believe. So good kill right in the beginning. Good shot. And looky here. This guy first fires with an LMG. And it looks like we got a stun recall in this one too as well. So that's I didn't even know what was going to happen. So the LMG was here. And he did get it to kill roll. Look at that. 6. You know exactly. And a 6 there. And so looks like a stun on that one there. And so that's essentially 2 vehicles gone on the Japanese turn 1. And the close combat doesn't look like they were effective. No, this is still the close combat hasn't come across. No, he does get a close combat here, and he does immobilize the vehicle. So that's huge, right? That's huge. This vehicle here, I'm not sure if we've gone to that point. Oops. I think they're going on. He misses there, and then the half squad, I think, gets killed with a close combat value. But the half squad in this location here, there's a half squad versus a vehicle and a 4-3-7 and 8-1. Remember, even if you have other infantry in there with a vehicle, it's still sequential, so the Japanese would get to attack first in that instance because there's a vehicle in the location. So obviously he missed a shot, but it's a 2-3-7. 2-1, 2-1 -1. Not too hard to. Damn it! Where's that damn bug? Not too hard to kill a half squad in close combat. So we got 1 loss, 1 victory over here, and 1 guy stuck in melee here. And we killed the tank behind us, and we caused the loss over here. So for all intents and purposes, the Allies lost 3 vehicles on turn 1. Very, very good efforts. Very good efforts on that. Both parts. The aggressiveness shown here to pin those guys down to get the infantry right on top. And although he's lost a couple vehicles, you might say, hey, he's lost a bunch of big points. But look how many points he got up there quickly. We've got 6 victory points on this side. We've got a leader and 3 squads here. That's 8 victory points. That's very close, right? So we may have lost 5, perhaps 10. But, I mean, we're kind of making it up for the 6 and the 8, 14 points that essentially made it, at least first turn into positions where they could possibly make another jump to another location. So the infantry do add up in this particular scenario, and he hasn't even brought on his other infantry. So although he may have lost those vehicles, you can still get the infantry off and still count. So, and That's probably what he intends to do. Couple shots here and there. Lots of guys moving and pinning. So now it's getting tight. You know, the Japanese are closing on these tanks, and so it might be bad news for. Unfortunately, got pinned over there. Oof, lots of bad rolls over there. CMG malfunction on that tank on the left hand. Both of them on the left hand side. So both these vehicles have essentially no main armaments. That's pretty wild. We got a kill there. And this is just of the infantry and the LMGs. So this poor bastard's got to make it past his AT gun. So here comes the infantry rush. We still have a melee in the center. And that guy's recalling, so he's gone. That tank's coming up. Looks like he got off. Yeah, he got off. And the infantry howitzer pulls up, starts blasting some infantry.
Now,
Now
the first guy I let go because I didn't want to risk mouthing my 37 up there.
yeah, that's a hell of a swing too, to kind of swing a couple, two hex sides. This way you're only swinging one, and you did get a good hit on that one there. You know, when the rolls come, it's really nice to have the rolls, and sometimes they just don't come. So the Japanese are dropping back a little bit here. Again, Craig's taken out a number of vehicles. Looks like there's wow, this one's immobile here as well. Probably from another shot, probably not from another machine gun or something.
No, the one he had bogged, and then he failed.
Oh, that's right, the bog.
check.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So that's bad. This guy's immobile, and mostly all the other vehicles are destroyed. So essentially the only thing he's got to get off are infantry. So even though he was super aggressive and got those infantry up there, he's kind of behind the 8 ball, especially since all that's open ground. And the Japanese infantry are in a decent position to really cover that advance on that side, because they all have leaders. There's a leader here, leader here, leader here. So they can get to wherever they want to go pretty effectively. And because the Allied units only have 3 range, again, 6 X's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, they could essentially run back this way and not even be shot at. You know, there's very few of those infantry units can actually get a hold of those Japanese. And if the Japanese fail the morale check, what happens? Nothing. They stripe. They might lose a little bit of firepower, but they're still effective units. When the Allies break and fail a morale check, they stop and they have to rally. And in a 5-turn scenario, when you have to stop and you have to rally and move through open ground again, it's likely that you're not going to get off. Because what do you see that's littering the map board right now? What's the white counter with green coloring that's littering the map board?
Lots of residual.
Lots of residual.
Yeah.
So that's what the Japanese needs to do. If essentially if there's only infantry left, you just take shots and you just drop down residual. Just drop down a wall of residual. Even though it may not be your best shot all the time, it makes them change. Like if all of these hexes here have residual in them and he doesn't want to take the 1-2 shots, and 1-2s for these guys, again, because they need to move. A 1-2 is a 7 for a pin task check. And if he fails that pin task check, then he stops. And he can no longer move. And a pin is just almost as good as a break, because he can't even advance at that point. You know, break, technically, he could potentially break forward if the opportunity had presented itself. Not necessarily on the side, but there's always that potential. But a pin is always much worse, in my opinion, because you're just stuck there. And then the Japanese can, because it was your movement phase where you got pinned with all that residual, the Japanese just move and maneuver in front of you again, and then it's like round 2, and it gets really difficult at that point. So what would be a good option to have here, although they don't have them? Let me see, they might. I do not think they have them on these vehicles. Probably not. Nope. So no smoke dischargers on these vehicles. So the Allies have 0 smoke making capability as it appears. They do have destroyed vehicle hindrances. That helps a little bit, but they're kind of scattered around. They're kind of random. But these guys just have to go au naturel and then open ground. There's no way they can cover. There's no American squad right here that can drop a smoke here to obscure this guy's fire. You know, there's nothing like that. So these guys just got to take shots, and they will probably fail. The Japanese just have essentially a lot of toys. The LMG, half squad. I mean, this unit here, the 8-0 and H9, he's got 3 separate attacks that he could shoot out. So that's going to be 3 separate hexes that he's going to cover for residual firepower. That one stack can cover 3 hexes. That's pretty impressive. So now it's a matter of breaking units. When they break, they're pretty much not going to be able to go anywhere. Again, you guys see the guys up at the front that are just breaking. You actually have a broken unit here. Oh, must have been the house squad, yep. And that's where the big infantry gun comes into play, because when that thing hits, it hits hard. And there's no hindrances between this unit and that unit. So it's going to be like it's probably a 6 to hit. That's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 6x range. It's an 8 to hit. 8 to hit, and then like a 9 for a morale check. I mean, that's crazy firepower. It's not going to get a ton of shots, but the firepower potential for damage is there. And it looks like Craig's doing a decent job. Just trying best as can is trying to shoot and break these units. There you go. Look at all the residual. Here comes the residuals. You know, an advanced fire.
Over here on the left, I was trying to like lay residual across these. So either for the open ground, he'd have to use movement factors to go there, or go through the residual in the open ground.
Exactly. And look where the 8-0 is. It's way up here. It moved around to get back up, because he's out of range and he's got all these hindrances. That's essentially like a free move to get up there. And then he's got to take 1 to 2 more shots to even get through there. And most of these guys are already CX'd. This guy's CX. Can this guy get off next round? Can this unit in A9 get off the board in turn 5?
No.
Does everybody see that? This unit is no longer part of the victory conditions. So if he were to move him first, which I would, and start moving this way, you do not want to fire on that guy. Don't fire on this guy because he can't do anything at the end turn, because you won't have a turn. In turn 5, the Japanese won't have a turn, so you're just defensive firing. You'd want to wait till the guys that could get off. And this guy's pinned. He could get off. This guy's got 6 movement factors to 8 movement factors available. This guy's pinned. He can't. He's not getting off. He's a leader. He could put 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He can't get off. So you've got 3 victory points that can get off over there, and that's it. I'm not sure how much he got off before here, but this is when I was talking about exit victory points. If you can count up the victory points at the beginning or at the end of essentially the allied player turn here, and determine whether or not it's even possible for him to get any more points off. And that's what you should be doing as a defender. So, okay, he's got a guy here, he's got a guy here. Let's say he self-rallies this guy. Who am I going to shoot at next turn? Who's getting off the board? Well, only one unit that we can determine. Only one stack of units, which is the 4-3-7 and the 8-0. Because everyone else is pinned. Nobody could advance up 1 hex. But the 8-0 and this guy could CX off the board. He might be 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He might be 6 plus an advance phase, or just CX off the board. So I'm not sure how many points he gotten off before. Let's say he got 10 points off before, and he needed 14 or 12 or 13. This guy's the only one you have to worry about. So everything you have is going to fire on this unit, and no one else. I don't care how bad of a shot that is. Nobody else is part of the victory conditions. So identify who's going to make you lose. Right? These guys aren't. These guys aren't. This guy isn't. Who's going to make you lose, and then concentrate on that. And then essentially what it does is it allows you to close out games. Make sure you don't fire on somebody that has no impact during the game. That makes it obviously if this guy had like a demo charge or something like that, and he could roll up onto this unit here and toss a demo charge on him, that's a different story, because he might take your guy out. The Japanese actually won't, because he's still going to be a 3-4-7. He's going to be reduced unless outright eliminated, which is a possibility. But that's something you might want to consider. If you get somebody that could actually attack you, And again, it won't matter because the demo charge doesn't go off into the advanced fire phase, and the game is over practically in the movement phase. So even though he might throw a demo charge on you, you just catch it and you hold on to it, you put it right next to your ammo supply, and you shoot at this guy going by, and then you blow up later on. So because it doesn't matter at that point if he blows you up, even if he gets a KIA, because you're either going to stop him or you're not at that point. So interesting game here, a little bit different development. You saw the differences here. You saw last game was an aggressive just blow by him, and the enemy's support weapons didn't really come into play that often. Here, very aggressive with the AFVs. He paid the price, but this is the price that as long as you're willing to pay that price and to try something like this, that's fine. You know, as long as it's part of your plan, trying to get these guys off. He had a potential couple tanks over here. They got caught and they got blown up. So, not much you can do about that. You might think about, like, because he had an infantry gun over here. I think the infantry gun came up late. I think after this unit was destroyed. So when I see the AT gun up here, 3 rate of fire, for me, I want to avoid that thing at all costs. At all costs for me. But whether or not, again, 4 to 5 turns, do we have time to make it off the side over here? That answer might be no. And if that's the answer, that's something you just gotta charge the AT gun. So, any questions on this one here? Anything that comes to mind? Exit, you know. Again, analyzing what the guys got here. Can these guys get off? Who get off? He's got a lot of guys there. He's got 3 squads, 2 leaders. We only got 1 squad and a leader that can get off. Everyone else doesn't matter. Everyone else doesn't matter. Okay, we're going to close that one. Let's go to the next one. And this is, let's go to, I think it's Alexi and Alex. Let's try this one. I think this is the one that we want to look at. That's a long load. All right, I'm loaded up. The defense here is a little different than you're going to see from the other one. And I'll wait for you guys to sync. All right, this is from the the Russian ASL club in Moscow. So this is Alex.
Set up way back.
Yeah, Alex, Alexi. Yeah, so the first 2 scenarios that we've covered has most of the pretty much they're almost identical. If you just lay them on top of each other, they're very, very, very similar. The guns were in different positions, but we didn't know that. And Craig had used HIP, and I don't think the first game HIP was used. I don't recall, but I might be mistaken. Here, you've got a very, like, really centralized setup. Good things and bad things about this particular setup. Anybody can mention. I haven't actually had it. What would you think of a centralized thing? What does that allow him to do? What does that not allow him to do?
I really like it. As soon as I saw it, I was wrong on the last one, but this one really looks good because you can shift right or left and move backwards all the time, and shift to the right or left.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah, it gives him some ability to go left and right, sort of like Stray or Strays, where you don't have that for the guys on the flanks. You can't get to the engagement if it's on the other side of the board. This is slightly different, where he can move left and right. What do you think this stack is for? These units are here for? Do you think there's a leader amongst these units? In the H.
That's probably a group for Banzai.
That's probably a group for a Banzai. That's what I would project it. Although the Japanese don't need 6 units, I think they could have any number of units go into Banzai. This could be a potential 2 Banzai. You could have a leader squad here and a leader squad here and a leader squad here. You got to remember, you have a lot of leaders. I mean, you could have, all these are single counters. All 4 of these could be different Banzai units going different directions. So, that's a potential. I don't know if that was the case or not in this one. So again, the setups are quite different here. And again, like I say, just you know, using different logs from different players, especially from across the globe. Everyone has their different ways of approaching a game. And the Allied approach is pretty similar. It's really funny. The The little trucks always came off to the side over here for the most part. And look at here. Look, where's the AT gun? That sucker's right up in the front. That sucker is right up in the front, which surprised
That's
me.
neat.
And he blows that sucker right out of the water. He happened to first fire, but again, one out the gate, and that's a huge high firepower unit. It happens to be the easiest target that he can hit because it is not a small or very small target. So I think I'm not sure which one's let's see if he fires again. So, and there's the other gun straight up ahead. He takes a first fire shot. 3 to hit is pretty damn good. And then he happens
And
to
it keeps rate.
yeah, and he keeps rate. So he shocks that unit. The next guy. Now, what happens if this vehicle gets immobilized in that location?
Oh, yeah.
It's destroyed.
One of them would have to be eliminated. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those guys is going to be destroyed. If you, the question, tactical question, if you were the allies here, and your vehicle here got immobilized, which one would you eliminate?
Immobilized.
Any reason why you would keep the immobilized unit in the game?
No, I would eliminate the mobilized. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I mean that's fine.
Off the board.
You can eliminate the mobilized. This guy's got a 33% chance of
Eliminate the immobilized.
The immobilized.
Immobilized.
Yeah.
Right. Not the shot guy.
Right.
Not the shot guy. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's a choice that you'd have to take. You'd have to sway. Okay, what do I have? Let's say this guy is 1 to 2 okay, flip, and then you got a 50% chance of him being dead or okay. He's got 4 firepower. He's got 6 firepower. So it's another thing you might want to consider is I lost one over here. Since you lost one over here, the mobilized unit over here is like, I might as well just go ahead and toss him and do some, bet hedging right here. Hopefully this guy will come back. His armor is slightly better, but just the firepower, 6 plus 3 here is not going to do anything. It's plus 3 over there, and it's plus 2 over here. So there's no infantry up front that this unit could fire at. So in my opinion, I think that if you were to be immobilized here, I'd take my chances with the shock tank, simply because he's still able to move, even though he's got red movement factors and no other vehicles next to him for next turn. So, but that's just something you have to want to make sure in SK, when you're moving your vehicles through other vehicles' locations, you want to make sure that you can't get attacked again, because if you get immobilized, that's the same thing as a kill. One of those tanks is going to be destroyed, and that's an SK. And ASL, you can be overstacked, but SK, I think we ran into that where the Shermans come on the bottom left and they need to get off the side on the road. I forget what that scenario's name is called. It's a pretty cool scenario. But I think one of the vehicles got immobilized after the other vehicle had ended its movement, and that was the result of that. So that kind of brought that up. So this guy just blows by. He just says, see ya. And a pretty decent move. Get the hell past these guns. And so he's, quote, relatively safe. But, out of the frying pan, maybe into the fire. We'll see what happens. And this bad boy does the same thing. He intensifies. Ooh, he rolls a 3. It blows that guy up. So Alexander's getting some good rolls on his to hits. 3s to hits will destroy tanks a lot. So that's 3 tanks left over. And remember, when you're driving by, when these units are done movement, right? What can you do with these movement with these guys? Let's say he moved here right and stopped, right? I stopped. What can he do during the movement phase?
What can the Japanese do?
What can the Allies do right here?
Oh, bonding fire.
You can bound fire. Yeah, you do. You want to do a 2+2 on this unit here. This one wants to do a 2+2 on this unit. I mean, they may not survive next round, and plus it might break this unit or at least reduce him for someone else to do something like that. So unfortunately, these guys, didn't have that opportunity, but these guys definitely. Well, he's shocked, so he really can't do anything, obviously. So, but take that fire, take that opportunity to drop your cheap residual, your cheap machine gun fire, whatever you could do, because you never know. Low firepower shots can come pay off every once in a while. So we got another vehicle flying by. So he's just gonna roll right up on him. Another vehicle rolling down the
As
end.
they say, you have to take every opportunity you can to mouth those guns.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Break down 11. You got to.
That's right. Yeah.
Because if it's break down 11, you might as well drive them off at that point. You only have one thing to do. And so, what's going on here? Oh, it looks like a mortar. Ooh, that's a mortar shot. Looks like it's advanced. Lexi is the Dutch player, and Alexander's the Japanese player. So he does pop him in prep fire phase, and he misses misses that point blank shot. Moz. And look what he have up top. We got that Banzai going. The Banzai, he's got to drop the mortar here. You can't carry over your initial whatever. So the medium machine gun he can carry. But in this case, I probably wouldn't want my medium machine gun in a Banzai mode. I'd probably just want to have a naked squad and use my support weapons as anti-tank weapons. That way, you could probably, even though the hit's pretty low, roll it to hit on that thing, probably get it to kill shot, and then hopefully, set up for somebody else to come in. But that's okay. That's a choice you make. But remember, you can't carry more than your initial portage capacity, so the mortar's got to be dropped back there, which one of these guys in the back can pick up, so it's not a big deal. So the Banzai's going. Banzai's got impulse movement to read up on that. Oh, there he goes. They fixed it. Excellent. So they did catch it. So the mortar goes back. And this unit here, this unit's going to have it's going to have a fun day. So Alexi rolls a 4 on that guy there. That's going to be an 8 firepower, -1. So it's a 3. I think it's a K. So he just outright dies. And then he rolls a snake eyes beyond that. So that's a -1. So those guys get vaporized. And then, so what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He should be able to get in that location. I'm not sure why he stopped. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's 7. 7 movement factors right here.
Yeah, remember it's kunai.
Yeah, because they started over here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yep.
So that's fine. So we get advanced in that location. That's fine. But I mean, they had great morale. He rolled a 2 and a 3, and that just vaporizes units. I mean, that's all there is to it. Not a bad idea, but the Banzai was what he was planning to hopefully try and kill those units. And the best part about it is if he was successful in destroying this unit, now his medium machine gun is in close proximity to another enemy unit. So not too bad, but this shit didn't pan out right there. At least on the top part of the map. Lots of machine gun fire down there. He does pin him there. Excuse me. I'd have to check the Banzai rules again. I'm not sure if he's immune to pin to the end of the movement phase or to the end of the turn, because that will make a difference.
Oh, that's a good question. I think you. All right, I'll look it up while you keep going.
Because he still has that Banzai counter, and if you flip the Banzai counter over, it would be lax. So I'm not sure when because this will come off at the end of the close combat phase, but I'm not sure when you flip that counter. I'd have to double check it. Usually you want to make it to your destination for sure when you Banzai. You kind of don't want to get stuck right out in front of him. You really want somebody to engage them in close combat. So when you calculate, when you set up your Banzais, you want to make sure that you can get there. And unfortunately, this tank was 1 hex way too far for the Banzai. Yeah, that was just unfortunate. So, let's see whether he's got. Geez, he's only got 4. He only has 4 tanks.
Well, as usual, the wording's a little loose. Yeah, Banzai units have their morale level increased by 1 for the rest of the player turn. That's interesting. So as long as they're lax, as long as they've got that marker on them, lose any concealment and are exempt from pin results, except unless entering bamboo or via a collapsing hut, while part of a Banzai charge. So the question is when does the Banzai charge end?
Right. I think that might be part of the end of the movement phase.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look. I'll have to read a little further.
Yeah. And the funny thing is when it says, you know, can be pinned to collapsed hut, I'm not sure how it's possible.
Yeah, how would you be if you're doing a Banzai charge, how would you
be subject to a collapsed hut? Because
Yeah,
a vehicle has to drive through the hut to collapse it.
Yeah.
And in SK, there is no moving vehicles and moving infantry at the same time. So
Yeah, I'm not even sure there is in
I'm
ASL.
not-
I'm not sure how that would work in ASL.
yeah, I'm not.
It would be logical if the Banzai ended at the end of the turn, but that's just my input.
Yeah,
Right.
well, yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for here. Yeah.
Because that makes a big difference of your morale level. Is when does the Banzai end? Because
Well, specifically in the rule, it says till the end of the turn. That's why I'm thinking, right, when the Banzai charge ends is different than the rest of the player turn.
right.
Because it specifically says your morale level is increased for the rest of the player turn.
Okay.
But you are exempt from pin while part of the Banzai charge.
It says Banzai unit remains part of the Banzai charge until it is eliminated,
Broken.
out,
yeah.
out of movement factors in a hex with an enemy unit at the start of an impulse, or can no longer move for the Banzai. So he's
Okay,
out, out of MF.
He's right. So it's basically as long as he basically can move, he is part of the Banzai charge. As soon as he's finished moving in whatever capacity, then he's no longer part of the Banzai charge. So yeah. Okay.
But he still has his morale level, right?
Yes, he would still have his morale level for the rest of the turn.
All right, which makes the counter kind of not applicable because you take the Banzai counter off of him, right?
The lax counter is only with regards to ambush, right?
Right, but his morale level. Let's see, where is it?
Yeah, I mean, lax doesn't affect your morale level at all.
No, let me see.
Lax just affects your ambush capability.
I'm gonna find the human wave. So right here, the human wave. Well, the human wave and the Banzai is the same, essentially the same thing. Let me find the Banzai one. Damn it, I don't have the Banzai on there. All right, whatever. Let me try and find the Banzai counter, just so we have to make sure we're looking at the right counter.
It's human wave. Yeah, I think you can find the Banzai counter.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Banzai, here it is. All right, so essentially they're exactly the same. So morale level +1, 8 movement factors, pin a heat to be not applicable. So when the Banzai ends, when you're out of movement factors, you don't lose the morale level because, as Mark pointed out, the morale level stays until the end of the turn. So the counter would flip, but then it really doesn't have the morale level on the backside here. But
yeah, it would have been nice if it did. Yeah.
Right, but you are subject to pinning, and for in that matter, I would think you'd be subject to heated battle as well because your Banzai is over now.
Well, except I don't think our Japanese. Well, first of all, Japanese aren't. Are Japanese susceptible to heated battle, or are they immune?
Well, when they're in human wave or Banzai, heated battle's not applicable.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess yeah.
But like on the counter, I mean, some of these things are applicable when they're out of movement factors, but the morale level isn't. So how do you really? I mean, I usually leave that on there until the end of the, till the end of the close combat phase, until the end of the phase where they flip it over. I'm never going to advance these guys in the close combat because then they're lax. You kind of don't, unless you're against a tank. So it's not a big deal. But see, at least here on the backside here, see the human wave here, that has a morale level +1. The Banzai does not have that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
I'm not sure if the original Banzai counter does have that, but this looks to be correct. This looks to be incorrect, and that's a counter error. But I hadn't actually noticed that on the human wave one, so that's interesting because pretty much the same way, and the duration of their morale level is really what you want, especially if you're not Japanese. You really need that extra morale level to survive defensive final fire attacks, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, everything else is going to be shooting at you after you're engaged in Banzai, because after you enter the enemy's location, you're not in melee yet. So other enemy units that say behind that location that wouldn't see you until you enter that location could fire upon you and not affect their own units because there's no melee there yet. Against Japanese, it's kind of like, well, whatever, you break, okay, now I'm striped, big deal. But against other units, you need that morale level to not break, like these green 437s. If they happen to be in a human wave, you need that 8 morale level throughout the defensive fire phase, and to be able to sustain any attacks, to be able to kill whatever your target is. So that makes a big difference in the counter. And the problem is you know, you use the Banzai counter for Japanese and you use the human wave for everybody else. So to be honest with you, just use the human wave counter. The Banzai counter appears to be wrong. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if that's the actual counter, but since we're on Vassal, that counter's wrong. And in the rule, to be honest with you, what I'll do is I'll look at the actual counters, and then what I'll do is I'll copy the morale level +1 and I'll put it on the Banzai counters for my particular mod. And at least those counters in my mod will be accurate. And for those players, people that use my mod for the Rex and all that other bullshit, at least that particular counter will be correct. Or you could contact the other guys. I'm not sure how long they get to it, but this is a quick fix. That's a simple quick fix. That's a good question though. Was when that Banzai charge ended, and and the rules define when it ends, but the counter just doesn't really back up what the rules say. So unfortunately, but always go by the rules. Counters can be misprinted. Let's continue on. First fire. Now again, what should he be firing his machine gun at? Should he be firing at these units or the tank?
Oh, I'd probably choose the tank myself.
Yeah, the tank's almost a 50-50 because he's got the 2 armor. If he hits the turret, it's going to be a 1 armor because it's going to be a inferior armor in the upper structure. So it's not too bad because he's going to be a +2 to kill. So that'll be a 5, but if he hits the hull, that'll be a 6. And he's got rate of fire. So I might fire over here with the squad for residual because he's got other guys behind. And but if he cowers, if this squad cowers on that attack over here, what happens to the machine gun? The machine gun gets final fired.
Final fired, yeah.
Yeah, so that you can't try to kill an AFE if the machine gun is subject to half firepower. So that's something that the target direction could be critical. Or now, are you going to cower a lot? You're going to cower 1 in 6 shots. Who cares? So I would definitely take that, considering you've only got 1 squad in position. I would definitely probably take that shot at a 4, as he did. I'm not sure if he fired 4 or 8. Doesn't really 4 or 6. Because it's long range, 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, the choice is yours. You just know that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to bring up a small point here, as people notice, since they may not be used to this, for those who don't play PTO, Japanese. Right now, the 447 carrying the machine gun is penalized because for Japanese, only crews can use medium and heavy machine guns without penalty.
Yeah, it's good catch. Good catch.
Yeah, so the rate of fire goes down by 1, and the breakdown number goes down by 1 for that squad if he fires the MMG. So just that's not something a lot of people will be aware of. So just to bring it up.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Very good catch on that, on the support weapons. So for the most part, like your big heavy machine gun support weapons are crew served in the Japanese army, and then the 447 is essentially just LMGs and mortars. For the most part, most of the time the Japanese player has half squads, or the OB has half squads, so the mortars are fired from there. But again, the choice is yours how you want to resolve that. But yeah, this does look kind of awkward, huh? That's true. Good catch, Mark. That's a good catch. So let's continue here. Let's see how the Japanese fare. And so, the Japanese still are pretty much still centralized in their in the defense. And unfortunately for the Dutch, his main armament, essentially CMG, malfunctions in D8 right next to that medium machine gun. So wow, looks like we got a LMG kill over here, but from Alexander, a 3 to kill, 7 to hit, 3 to kill, pops it off. I think that's his third kill with a machine gun in this game. It's at least the second. And so we've just got, so he fires, jumps into melee. Another jump into melee here. Okay, look at this. Look at the location in BB9. Let's figure out what's going on here. Let's calculate just for fun. Close combat values. Say there's no ambush. All right, there's no ambush there anyway. What is the close combat value for the Jap? Who goes first? And what is the close combat value of each of the units? Japanese engage this vehicle that is in motion in close combat in the advanced phase after the squad passes the pre-AV task check.
The Japanese roll first.
Japanese roll first.
By the way, the Japanese don't take patsies.
Oh, okay. There's another one. Japanese no patsies.
Japanese don't
At
take
all?
patsies.
First line, right? Or any of them?
Nope. According in SK anyway, it's Japanese are exempt from taking patsies.
Okay.
Yep.
Which okay, good deal.
Oh, that's why I didn't roll it in my team.
There you go. That's right. You were probably right, to be honest with you. So if this was a normal unit, leaders don't need to take the patsies. The squads get to take the patsies. So the leaders aren't going to have any close combat value anyway. So what's the close combat value of this leader and the squad versus that vehicle when they attack? And just like Craig said, the Japanese attack first here. What do they need to destroy this vehicle or get an effect?
Yeah.
Well, it's the CCV is going to be a 6, so 5 for the squad plus 1 for the leader. But the vehicle's in motion, so that's a +2, I believe.
Right.
On the roll.
Right. So that would be a 4, which again is like the to kill on the machine guns and on your mortars and so on and so forth. So essentially, it's just a mobile, very close to kill. Now on the back side, what is the attack value of this vehicle versus these units?
Well, he's in motion, so he would be a 4.
Okay.
I don't think you do. Yeah. So it'd be a 4 against 6. So it'd be a 1 to 2.
Right, because he's in motion. The close combat value for vehicles is their coaxial machine gun. You might be able to use the AA gun, I believe, and I think that's about it. So if he wasn't in motion, he'd have 8. And again, you don't use the strength values of the counters. Like if this was a reduced squad, it'd have a 3 firepower, and the leader with it wouldn't be 4. It's their close combat value. So the close combat value would be a 5 for the unit and a 1 for the leader. So it's actually 4 to 6. So the Japanese have a distinct advantage in this particular engagement here. In terms of defensively, they both need 4s for an effect, but at least the Japanese aren't completely vulnerable as you might think jumping on top of a tank. And that guy's got 8 firepower machine guns. If the other tanks that were in the game that have 6 or 4, and they were in motion, they'd have 3 and 2 close combat values for the vehicle respectively against the Japanese. So their attacks back are going to be very, very limited, very on the low side, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 shots, against the leader. And so you are pretty safe when you're jumping these vehicles in close combat. Now, when he pulls away there, he might blast you on the way out, but hey, you at least get a 4. You get to roll a 4 to try to immobilize this guy, and that's if that's all you got. That's all you got. And then hopefully, since this guy, how far can this vehicle move? How far can this 26 movement point vehicle move from that location? Let's assume he's going to drive up in open ground.
What's it? 4 MP?
Yep. So 4.
And kunai is probably and kunai is probably what? Can he even enter kunai?
Yeah, he might. It might be 5 or 6. It's pretty nasty. But
Look
four
at-
would take us 6 hexes, right? So this unit here can just Banzai right the hell after him, or just CX right after him. These squads can chase this vehicle down all over this map. They can't do the other vehicles because the other ones are AFVs and they just kind of, they've got they're tracked vehicles, so they can blow by you, as we saw. But this vehicle here is very slow. Once these Japanese are on top of them, these infantry need to peel these little, parasites off this tank because they will eventually get a hold of him and kill it. Now, you've got 8 firepower machine guns saying otherwise, but still they might be able to get on top of him. So again, just another part of that OB that you have to mention. You have to make sure that applies. And again, this guy's got to roll to move at the beginning of the turn. He needs to roll less than an 8, I think, or 8 or less. I think that's the roll that the scenario special rules dictate. If he starts moving, that's 6 firepower and then 2 minus 2 right there. It's going to lay lots of residual firepower, even though he failed his morale check. You can't do that as the Dutch in this one. You fail a morale check, you're out of combat. That's a simple fact. The Japanese stay alive very often. Look at this guy. He rolled a 12. It looks like he rolled a 12 right here. Casual reduce, CLR, a whole 9 yards. He's still at 137. He can still attack that tank in close combat. Rolling a 12. The son of a bitch is still around. That's what you have to deal with the Japanese. And when you have an opponent like that, you need to fire. You need to fire early and you need to fire often before he gets on top of you, just like he did that tank. And he's going to roll tons of dice. I mean, hopefully he'll get something. I don't know. I love you. Looks like he lost that close combat. But Alexei looked like he rolled a 3 and vaporized a couple of units. And now the LMG is malfunction, no anti-tank capability. This tank can just stroll off. So now, what allowed this tank to leave this melee? What the hell happened there? Is that a screw up? This tank just said screw up, starts peeling off. Is that?
That's what vehicles can do.
That's what vehicles can do. Only the infantry are in melee. The vehicle. What I would do on the vehicle is I would put a melee counter on the infantry and a CC counter on the vehicle to make sure that you don't fire outside that location mistakenly. And then the vehicle just moves on. It could actually start the prep fire phase, fire triple point blank fire. Well, it could either prep fire phase or movement phase, fire into the hex, and then leave. So vehicles just do exactly what he did. Just slide right on out. Same thing with this one down here. He just says, see ya. And then look, he only goes 5 hexes. Those infantry, well, now that he's wounded, he really can't catch up to him. But and so we've got some shots from this guy here. And so here's where this 447 just lays down tons of residual firepower. Can't quite shoot at that guy. Of course, these guys do the smart thing and slide on out, and I think that might have been enough for a victory. So he's got 5 for that tank, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Maybe he moved somebody else off earlier. So, you got some feedback, John, on your end?
Sorry.
No worries. So, so you saw how this defense worked here. I mean, you've got the one game. The first game was the guys drove by him. And even though he didn't have a lot of anti-tank capabilities that he thought at his disposal, he still got 3 vehicles gone. The second one was Cesar and Craig's game. Very aggressive play on Cesar. Jammed as much as possible. His plan of uber aggression. I think you won that one. Did you, Craig?
Yes.
Okay, so even though the uber aggression was there, he just fell short. I mean, it could have worked out for him. But again, that's his plan. He's froze those guys so his infantry can get up there and then hopefully have his infantry a potential to get off. That's probably what he was trying to do, is say, well, let's say if my armor can't get off, then I need a plan to hopefully get my infantry off. And having them broken on the board's edge once they came on was Caesar probably wanted them to get a little bit further on before they can, be incapacitated. And this one here, you know, the first two games, the defenses looked very similar, straight across broad band right in the orchard, well, not the orchard, but the palm trees and the kunai. And in this game, a very, very centralized, very linear, straight up the middle defense. So even though a lot of his attacks early on were effective, I mean, he tore up. I mean, look at all the vehicles destroyed on the bottom board. 1, 2, 3. He's got 4 vehicles and 1 immobilized. And then through his persistence by moving the infantry up and you know, ignoring opportunities where he thinks he has to remain in close combat, move the vehicle off, move the infantry up. And you know, what did he do here? He charged the guy. He's got to take a shot at him. Well, maybe he's got to take a shot at him. If he moved 1, 2, 3, 4, he either shoots here or gets 1 shot over here. That's probably what. That's probably one thing that you might want to think about is go back on this log. Is if this unit was only going to move there, very similar to what we covered before, is he getting off? Right. Let's back this up. Let's see if I can back this up without the backup thing exploding. Yeah, it's skipping really hard. Okay, hopefully, let's see this works. Okay, that guy first fired. So we don't want that one. We want the other one. Slow and easy. I want to see where this guy comes from. Come on. Okay. I think he comes from here. Let's follow the path. So can this guy get off the board? The unit in C8. Can he exit the board? Can the unit in C8, if you could see him, can he exit the board?
Yes.
Okay, so he has a potential victory point plot. So let's move that guy there. And that guy moves 1, 2. Now, knowing that we have this, and this in the background, right? Can he enter our location? How many points do the allies have off right now? It appears only 5. I'm not sure if he exited more guys, just put them off to the side. To me, it appears he has 5 guys, 5 points off the board. Let's go with that. So if you're this guy, your LMG's gone. What do you do with this guy here? Right? Do you fire? Can you afford to fire on him here? Now, this is tactically thinking. We've got stacks of units here. This guy's already fired. I think, well, maybe he's going to fire up next. I think he fires next on units going in here. But we have a leader, 2 squads, a leader, 3 squads, and then 2 squads right here, all whom can get off, even the CX units. 2, 3, 4. This CX unit can't get off unless the leader moves with them. So we got lots of guys that can move off. We know if we fire here, we can't fire over here just as the Dutch planned, right? So if we ignore that shot, and let's say he moves here in B5 instead, right? What do? Do we fire at B5? We're still going to be frozen. At this point, you might want to consider letting that guy just roam free, letting this guy exit. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he'd just be stopped right there, right? Because he didn't CX. There's no CX marker on him. So he's only going as far as this location here. So technically, we don't even need to fire on him because whatever we fire on, if we're first fired, we can always finish off with that guy at the end of the turn. So if we ignore this unit here and don't fire on him, we'll just move the DM over there. Then the Dutch have to make a decision here. So he moves 2 here. If he moves 2 there, he's not getting off. A movement factor of 2 here means this unit's not getting off if he's not CX'd. So this unit doesn't have to fire on that particular unit. Because 2, 3, 4, advance. That's it. No victory points here. Now the leader CXs these guys. Now he's a problem. Now if we didn't fire, where are we going to fire when these guys show up?
Right there.
Yep, right here. Why is there? Why there, Craig?
Because it's the open ground, so either he goes through the residual with a -2, or he's got to go through the kunai.
Right.
or the woods.
Right.
Who expend more movement factors.
Right. Either way, we're expending movement factors. And if he goes to the kunai, this guy gets to shoot again. And this guy's firing until he breaks. So last turn of the game, I think it's the last turn of the game, he's firing until break. Doesn't matter if he's not firing until he breaks. He's firing until he breaks. Right? That's going to be a 1-1 shot. Fire on him here. Not when he gets to B5, because if he gets to B5, the same situation applies right in the beginning. These guys just slip on the left-hand side. So fire right here to reduce the movement factor. This guy on the bottom is CX. He's not getting off unless he's going through that residual firepower. So if we fire there, let's say we get, let's just say we get an effect, we break those units. Or leave 2 residual there, and then this guy's first fired. Guy on the bottom has got to go through there to get off. So he's going to take a 2-2 shot right there. The guy on top can CX and get around him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If he does that, where do you want to fire there? Let's say this guy double times. And he goes 1, 2, 3. We're going to ignore the LMG. Who cares? But we don't need the LMG. 2, 3. Do we fire here? Or do we wait?
I think I'd wait for here, so then the Dutch, then you've got residual there, and the Dutch have to go there, and you can final protective fire.
Exactly. Exactly. You know that if the Dutch want to avoid this, so you're going to fire there. Let's say we fire there. And how much residual are we going to leave
but
behind?
I gotta
them?
say, if the Dutch were playing it right, this unit wouldn't have gone off. He should have just stopped there.
Right, he
So
would
then
have.
He only gets 1 shot.
Yeah, yeah. He would have. I think he would have stopped there because I think he
I
started.
think he'd have to, right?
Yeah, he started here. I think he 1,
'Cause he
2,
could only
3,
get to
4.
4.
Right, but you still leave this guy. Yeah, he would still be there, and then you would have that first fire
So
shot
then
there.
you wouldn't have a shot there.
Right, and then that'd be a rough shot at that point. Then you would have this, but you would have this residual here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this guy could just go 6 movement points, and he would be here, and then he'd be able to get off. So, is that enough? I'm not sure how many points he had off before. This guy will get off 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 plus 5 is 14. I think you need 12 or 15 or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how many, but you know, always when he's moving, you need to check his other units to see if you can adjust your fire. Like if this guy wasn't here, and he happens to get off. And at that point, if you are the Greek, or if you're the Dutch, and you can get this guy off, right? You don't want to take him off. You want to leave him right there, even if he can get off. Right? First of all, you double time to bait his shot, and then you just stop right there, even at 4 movement factors. Because when he fires here, because you've already calculated the avenues of approach that you need to take off to get off, you leave him there because he can always advance off. Because you've got tons of guys here. You move a guy here to cause the first fire, and then it just takes a little longer to open that outside avenue to your attacks. And then you'll be fine. Because if you just move him off there, and if he's not there, then we can do exactly what Craig had anticipated. You fire here, and then you final protective fire there. He's taking residual the rest of the game of getting guys off. So it's very critical.
You can't route off board. Is that correct?
You cannot route off board, no.
Yeah, I was just thinking if, he first fired, he final fires on there in the defensive fire face. If he breaks the Dutch unit would then have to route there.
Right. And even if there are instances in ASL where broken units can exit the map board, like being transported, etc., but they do not count for victory purposes. So if you could transport 3 squads on your giant lorry, and none of those units are going to count for victory points. Broken units do not count because they just don't. So they have to be unbroken units. Now they can be pinned in a half track and get off. As long as they're unbroken, they're fine. But yeah, you want to make sure you've got one unit because he doesn't have the LMG. You want to really try and analyze how he's going to move. Again, if he moves off, that's a mistake because then you have subsequent first fire and then final protective fire residual that you're going to drop.
The less peaceful Christmas scenario, you can route off. as the Filipinos broken
Nice.
for victory points.
Nice. So that's definitely an SSR you don't see very often. But that's an interesting one there. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting scenario. So, but as you break down this attack, remember he's the one squad. That's where the LMG is key. If he had it, it'd be great because he'd be open to better attacks. But even in this situation there, if this unit were to get off or not be in his face, then we'd have it. Then we wouldn't have it made as the Japanese, but we'd have a more effective chance of laying down some residual where he has to cross the residual to get through us. And those are all free attacks. Even 2-2, 1-2. Remember, 1-2 is a 7 for a pin task check. If he gets pinned, he's done. He's not moving off. And if this was the last turn of the game, again, they don't have a turn marker here, but I think it was, then they're just as good as dead. So play your games out that look like they're insta losses, because you never know what happens. Like with this guy drops some residual right here, it cuts off another zone. You know, one residual is all you need. It's all you need. Can they run through it, especially 8 morale units? Sure. But, you know, hey, I've rolled 3 10s before. You know, that happens. You know, and then you work from there. So, but yeah, I just want to show you at least those are the 3 scenarios. Almost 7:30. We'll go and cut it here. Get some questions going if you guys have any questions. But again, first 2 scenarios, very similar setups, but different outcomes. Directly different outcomes. One aggression. One guy just blew by him. And again, I think Scott was just short on knowing the effectiveness of some mortars, which is fine. Again, that's why we're here. We're here to learn these little things about the game to make a seemingly unbalanced dog into like, hey, this is kind of reasonable. You know, can they get off fast? Sure. If you miss your shots with your AT guns and 75s, you're probably not going to win this scenario. You're just probably not, because the kills on the other ones are a little low for the volume of tanks that you have to kind of deal with. So that's probably what the Japanese here were anticipating. Is I got my 37 up front, ready to fire 3. I might be able to pick off 2 tanks by the end of turn 2, but turn 1, and then maybe intensify that. And if he loses it, that's 2 less tanks he has to deal with. And so, and the 75 was right behind him. So obviously covering down this way because there's a lot of hindrances over this direction. But and then the last game here, you know, lined up, centralize your infantry in the center, and then they can go left or right. And that's exactly what he did. He moved them both left and right, and tried to deal with the enemy units as needed. It just ended up a little short in this particular game. So, any questions, gentlemen? Any comments? Anything else? Like Mark said about the next scenario, the Chinese can get off the board broken, so that's going to be a cool one to look at, see how that develops, and that will be all Banzai. So understanding when to Banzai and when not to Banzai is pretty key. You really don't want to Banzai into when he's got 6 or 8 units ready to gun you down. So that's something to think about, unless of course you got smoke. And if you're the Japanese, you probably have 1 or 2 of those mortars, which could fire smoke and white phosphorus. I think this one has got white phosphorus in the back. Yeah, white phosphorus and smoke. So you fail your smoke roll, shoot your white phosphorus, or shoot your white phosphorus first. You've got lots of options with that mortar. So, but that's all I got for you guys this week. If you guys, like I said, if you guys got any questions, we'll end it with your questions. Anybody playing the game of the month this month for the starter kit one, or maybe the ASL one? The ASL one is actually an easier game for you guys to play than the SK one, simply because the SK have Japanese. So to be honest with you, even the SK players, you could jump into the ASL one. The only thing you really have to kind of look at is pretty much bypass movement, and that's not too bad. As long as if you pick up an ASL player with you to make sure that I had one guy thinking that you could only bypass maybe 1 hex, which it's possible. It's possible to misunderstand that, but just a little bit of clarity here and there, and and that scenario is pretty much just a run and get the hell off the board, drop smoke as you go. So that's something you might want to look at. If not, then the other SK1, again, scan those, read those Japanese rules, read the Banzai rules, and read the example of the Banzai. I made a video of the Banzai a year or two ago when SK4 came out, just going over that specific example. It's nothing new. It's just that example in video form, which can sometimes be easy to follow or maybe not. And but the Japanese are a different tool to work with. They're very different to play against and play with. So I just want to expand your guys' horizon on that, and then we'll try and get back to get back to normal after that. But if you guys have any questions, comments, I guess we'll just end it here. It's 7:30. Want to try and end them on time from now on. Although I have 2 other replays to go, I don't want to take you guys too late. I know most of you guys are Easterners, so
Yep.
But if I'll take a look at those, and I'll look for specific things in those particular games. Again, not a lot of routing questions for the Japanese here, right? Because they don't break. They don't break, and they just step reduce. So the Japanese really don't have a routing problem, and so that really doesn't come into play here. The Dutch, one other thing, Japanese really aren't going to bother with broken units. They don't need to. So so the routing is not a really big key issue in this particular scenario. But thanks for coming by, gentlemen. Thanks for your questions. Good catch on that one, Mark, with the medium machine gun. Very big distinction. Didn't even see that. But something to take into consideration. I see guys do that with flamethrowers a lot, putting flamethrowers on first line units. It's a no-go. I mean, you could do that, but the breakdowns are reduced by even more. And with some of the flamethrowers break destruction 10, you don't want a destruction 8, and especially if you're conscript or green, it takes it down to destruction 7. Man, you're just giving the weapon to the wrong person at that point. So yeah, check your requirements for your special weapons, and just review your nationality distinctions. Every game's going to be different. Absolutely.
The other question I had is, I'm playing S15 with somebody, and I think it's the American 50L. It has a HE ammo shortage. I find it very useless. Like, again, it's got a 7, but they're in a building. Like, I find they just run out of this HE so fast, and these ammo shortages are really impactful on their value. Because if they don't have HP, they're shooting infantry at a 2.
Is that the 57 millimeter?
57, yeah. Sorry, 57.
Right.
Yeah.
Check the scenario special rules. A lot of times, scenario special rules will increase that HE7 to like HE10.
Okay.
Not in this one. No, Hammer to the Teeth is definitely that one's been played many times. Favorite here. The 57. Yeah, the 57 is definitely tough. Again, you're looking at kind of the same things. You're looking to hit units moving in the open. That sort of thing, and you just kind of herald those HE shots, that HE ammo to, maybe try to get that one stack that makes a mistake or something like that, and you just pound them,
That's kind of what I've done, is I've left them hidden until they made a mistake and walked in the wrong spot, and then one of them popped one couple units and it worked out. The other thing I'm planning to use it is, it's hidden and they don't know where it is. And the scenario, they have to get rid of all MMCs from the buildings within the center, so they can't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that certainly is not an illegitimate strategy for that scenario. Yeah. You've got now a crew hidden somewhere in that mass of buildings, and he's got to find them.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Right. And notice one thing to note on that is a lot of times, because especially if you're dealing with stone buildings, and in this particular instance, your 57 millimeter, you'll say, well, I'll just do area target type on the building so it's easier to hit. Well, make sure that the area target type can only occur if you have HE ammo. You can't area target type with AP ammo. So it's important to note that when you're swapping the area target type. Because a lot of guys, you know, I'll take the +2 or I'll take the +3, whether it's a stone or wooden building, but I'll hit you more often, you know, and you have to have HE. And for those few guns like yours that have a depletion number lower, you have to remember that depletion still counts. You have to fire HE. You have to have it available.
And if I shoot HE and it doesn't have it, I can then turn and shoot AP, right? In the same,
Right,
because it's
right,
like
right.
it doesn't shoot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's considered not a shot. Yeah, you
Not
didn't.
a shot.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
sounds good.
Firing it immediately.
So like if I go to shoot like an open ground unit, and I miss HE, then I can say, okay, that sucked, but here's my 2 at you, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Or at that point, you could fire the crew, like if it's 2 hexes away, because the gun didn't
True.
fire.
Yeah.
You just fire the crew 2 -2
Yeah.
or something like that, or 1 -2
Gotcha.
if it's the range. So
Yeah. No.
yeah, at that point, it's if they get within 2 hexes, at that point you might as well just fire your crew. But again, you've got rate of fire with a gun. You know, that's something you might want to consider, and so that's a possibility there. So very cool. Yeah, good questions. This is replay number 4. Let's see who's. I'm not sure who's between, but again, looking at the defense, very centralized defense as some of the first 2 or 3 that we saw in the beginning. We've got some sort of straggler unit in E9 on the top, and a guy in T10 on the right hand side. Looks like to me, looks like 2 leaders, and all the support weapons are kind of centralized, and pretty much it's such an infantry front to me. No, the guns could be. I think the guns in these are in very different situations. So the ally player setting up, and in this case, the ally player looks like he moves all of his infantry first, which is interesting, to be honest with you, because if you move your infantry first, it might draw the fire of medium machine gun, mortar, light machine gun, infantry howitzer. Probably not the AT gun, but you know, if you give a guy a -2 shot out in the open, some guys are akin to take those regardless of the consequences. So he's made some good leeway, moved up 4 units, only 2 of them pinned, nobody broke. And now that everyone's first fired, the tank comes flying through, and unfortunately comes face to face with I think he should have lost concealment since he fired, right? Oh no, maybe not, since it's I'd have to check the SK concealment loss rules on that. I think if it's just if you fire. But anyway, it smokes that tank there. Fires again, smokes another tank. So the first movement phase, 2 tanks are gone. And then, you know, we've got the third one coming up. And the infantry, I think that's the infantry howitzer. We'll find out in just a minute. Looks like a miss there. So we've got a shot off from the medium machine gun and the 10-. Oh, the AT gun's on the side. Interesting. So I think that in this case, I think that's a machine gun shot, because I don't see any counters being placed. But you know, the highlighted showed first on the AT gun, and the highlighted came over here on the medium machine gun. To hit a 2 does what with a machine gun firing upon an armored unit? I roll snake eyes with a machine gun against an armored unit. What occurs? What occurs when I roll snake eyes on you with a machine gun on the hit roll?
Critical hit.
Yeah, but I don't think machine guns can get critical hits.
That is correct.
Right.
That is correct. That is already built into the to kill dice roll, whatever that means. But that's just a rule. That's probably the last line of a long, deep paragraph in both SK and in ASL rulebooks. So his to kill value was an 8, which we know is far above what the thing needs to kill. But and that's a side shot as well. But that's beside the point. 0 armor, that wouldn't kill it with a 0 armor on that medium machine gun. But you know, mistakes happen. Oh, that's right, because they probably doubled the 4 to an 8 and added 1 for the range to make it a 9. So that's probably why they killed it on an 8 there. So easily overlooked. You're probably not going to roll critical hits on your machine guns too often. But just know in the back of your mind that, it's kind of weird firing machine guns at tanks anyway, in that if a weirdness like that occurs, then there's probably going to be some sort of weird rule behind it as well. And unfortunately, it's one of those rules that you don't use very often, but still kind of have to remember, because it could come up in early war situations or in very weak armor situations. It can make a big difference. I always have to look that up because I just don't remember. I don't. First of all, I don't expect to hit, but when I do, it's like, oh, what the hell's going on? You get all excited. It's like, forgetting to roll leader loss morale check or things like that. You just get caught up in the heat of battle, and you get excited with the snake eyes, and everything else crits on the snakes just about, and so you just kind of lose yourself in the moment. But that's just one of those. Oh, I remembered this funky rule, and yeah. So it doesn't really. I don't really think it makes a giant difference in this one here, but every little thing could. If that tank were alive and kept on strolling, it the impact is potential. The potential is there for a difference impact. So we got more tanks moving up. Again, I like the difference on this attack here, in that the Dutch player moved his vehicle second. I think everybody else moved their vehicles initially, for the most part, and so he threw some infantry on the board to see what could draw some fire. He drew some fire, and maybe try to bait some guys out. And he's going with his plan. And then the slowest guys come on board, to do their little thing. And then John, we got some feedback, John, on your line.
Sorry.
No worries. And so the slow battleships come in, do some bounding fire on these guys here. I'm not sure if that guy's in motion, so not much going to happen. Oh, actually, it's really small rolls. So this is Dimitri and Fedor, I think, in this one here. So, yeah, that artillery piece, interesting. And the infantry gun, interestingly enough, destroyed 2 of those vehicles. So, I mean, low rolls can definitely make you win this game pretty easily. We got some mediums moving, alternating, shifting up. He's going to advance phase adjacent to those 2 tanks there, where he needs to be. The AT gun swivels. Because he could fire through this H9 location, because that will only be a hindrance. And so therefore, when this tank shows up, it goes to here. That's going to be limited duration in your line of sight, but the line of sight hindrance isn't going to be much at all. So it's going to be +2 or 3 maybe net. And so it's still not a bad shot, but it's a good idea to swivel in your prep fire phase as an action that you can do instead of swiveling in the defensive fire phase, where you're going to be adding up 4,000 modifiers. Move now. Remember, you can change the covered arc of your vehicles if they have the ability to fire in that specific phase, whether it be the prep fire phase or the defensive fire phase. So if you need your AT gun to prep for moving like this, use your prep fire phase to move, or swivel your gun into the appropriate location. The same thing in the defensive fire phase. If the guy moves, you may not need to fire on him, but you could swivel your gun later in the defensive fire phase. Heck, you could take a shot at him at that point, and then it's at least ready to fire on him in your prep fire phase. And a lot of times that's more useful to do when he's either A, not in your LOS, or B, you're hidden and he's already moved and is facing the opposite direction. You swivel in defensive fire phase to get ready. You could fire on him, get an acquisition. That's all you're going to get. And then you're going to follow that up with a prep fire shot, probably right up the tailpipe. And that's timing. So that's knowing when to fire and what's going to give you the best chance of destruction of a particular vehicle. And of course, that's situational. Like, would you want to swivel and fire early if his infantry haven't moved? Because then his infantry could just move up on your AT gun when it's revealed and just jump in close combat, and then you don't have a prep fire phase next turn. That's what I did in my Nishembi Bashari highway video. My gun was there forever and ever. I couldn't afford to move it, turn it, anything, because his infantry would just swarm me like a mad dog, like wolves, and just wolf pack just tearing me apart. So I had to wait for the right moment. Luckily, that moment happened to present itself during the game. Otherwise, I would have had to do something more desperate. This one is a lot less desperate, and this is something that you all should think about and understand why he's moving that gun and not firing. And that's kind of like the long and short of it. Mostly the long of it, of course. But this is a good example of knowing how to operate and use your guns, your AT guns, effectively in a hit. There's no other targets over there. I mean, technically there's this target, but he's never going to hit that. You know, and it's very slow, right? And it still has to go through his infantry wards. So these targets he could pick up later. Those guys aren't getting away from his infantry, period. They're just not. These guys are getting off, and technically that's the game right there, right? I mean, he's got 3 vehicles. I think the scenario is 12 points. I don't recall. Don't remember. I think it's for some reason 12 comes in my head. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, 12 sounds right.
okay. But the priority is these guys here, and considering this is an infantry gun, 1 shot, it's gonna have to change cover arc twice. That's gonna be a tough shot, and that is a +1 vehicle. So that's gonna be 2, 3, 4, and he's in motion. That's a +6, just to swivel on this guy. That's something hard to do. Excuse me. So turn 2, did he move? This must still be turn 1. Yeah, Japanese turn 1. Now he's adjacent to these guys. Great shot, because again, although these guys are in motion, these guys are great. Let's say if these guys were not in motion, and these guys moved adjacent to him, at that point, you definitely would want to try and get these guys into motion status by trying to roll a die roll against this unit moving in that location. Although it's probably just a 2, right? It helps in preventing this unit, because these guys no longer have to do a start. They still have to roll their task check, I think, if they're not in motion. But let's say they pass the task check, they move 1 away instantly, which reduces the to-kill value of this medium machine gun, because it's not 1 hex away, it'll be 2 hex away. Instead of +2, it's only going to be +1. So that increases the survivability of these tanks by being in motion, or at least rolling to get in motion. So even though these tanks could possibly fire on this unit, let's say he has an AA gun or whatever, or would you want to fire on this Japanese unit? Let's say the machine guns were already pointed that direction, and you were not in motion, right? You were not in motion. Let me try and clone 1. I'm going to clone 1. And we're just going to hit this guy. Oh, I can't hit the stupid thing. So let's just say you have a tank here, and let's say his turret covered arc is already facing that direction. And in the movement phase, this Japanese leader and squad roll up on you, specifically Japanese leader, right? And again, this is where you have to take into account who the hell you're fighting, right? So let's say we have a 8 firepower. Let's say it's one of these bad boys down here with 8 firepower, or even higher, and he rolls up on us. So we get an 8 even shot. We could have a potential of an 8 even shot, or a potential motion die roll. But remember, we can't fire and go into motion. We get one or the other. So which would you rather do? Try to go to motion, or shoot that guy at a 12 firepower even?
So I think if you fire and you break your gun, right, that's an automatic recall, isn't it?
The gun would malfunction. Let's say the gun would malfunction. So
okay.
If it were broken completely, like a 6 repair, then you would be recalled, yes, in that particular unit, yeah.
Okay.
But just the firepower itself. Let's say you can get either a 12 firepower shot on this Japanese leader and squad, or you could attempt a motion attempt. Which would you rather do in this situation based upon the victory conditions and based upon your opponent?
I'd want to run off.
You would probably want to get that motion attempt to get...
yeah, the Japanese squad doesn't have to take a patsy, right?
Well, yeah. Well, our turn... Yeah, that's true. That's true. And
Right.
plus the effect. What's the effect going to be when you fire on him?
At best, you're probably going to strike him.
Yeah. So he's still going to be able to have
A full squad, full squad attacking you.
Yeah, even if he didn't advance upon you for whatever reason, right? Let's say he just I just want to be here. I like being in the woods. If he didn't advance on you and you're stopped, which could be an option, right? Because if he stripes you here and you advance on him here, well, all he's going to do is stripe you again, which puts you to half squad. He still has a machine gun on you. And then you start, and then he could fire the machine gun on you, and then you walk away. And he could get potential multiple shots at +2 on the to kill. Whereas if you were in motion, right, as the vehicle is beneath him, then you instantly move that 1 hex away. And also, if he is here and he is going to jump in close combat, his close combat value is going to be modified by your motion status. So again, the survivability of these vehicles is paramount to striping this unit.
Right.
You know, but considering these guys are fast vehicles, right, that they can outrun this unit, that would be my particular choice. Now, if you're dealing with these trucks down here that are only going to be moving, I mean, God knows what the cost of the kunai is for these trucks. I think it's 5, maybe 5 or 6, but it's pretty slow. So you're going 3 to 4 hexes, and at that point, what can this guy do in his movement phase? What can this leader and unit do in his movement phase if you moved like 3 or 4 hexes up here because of your truck movement? Banzai. He just catches up to you, and then gets the close combat value again too as well. And notice, Mark mentioned this earlier in the previous game. Again, very common occurrence, and that's what we're going to be seeing in some SK players, simply because the Japanese are new to us, right? And I was thinking about this the other day, and I really don't think it's that bad of an idea. But the medium machine gun with a non-crew unit decreases the breakdown of that weapon. That unit is not a qualified unit. So how much does it decrease it by, Mark?
Breakdown number goes down by 1, and the rate of fire goes down by 1.
Yeah.
And your original, like with anything else, your original breakdown number is now an X number. So it'd be a B10X11.
Yeah. So that's
manned by that squad. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
And with a rate of fire of 1, not 2.
But and I was thinking, like, man, why would you ever do that? But I came up with a situation again, just like a lot of Russian vehicles and or Russian armaments, and even these things are all breakdown 11, right? I say they're going to break eventually, but think of it, if you had a whole bunch of units, and although the Japanese theater, the PTO theater is a little different, especially if it's to do with dense jungle. I don't think dense jungle is defined. Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. The Scenario 1 has got dense jungle in it, from the SK4. Is the stacking limitation. So if I didn't shove the 447 with the medium and let's say another 447 in the hex, well, that gives me 12 firepower, and adjacent was 24 firepower. Now, if I had a crew, right, manning the support weapon, I could put the squad and then a single crew in that location, but I couldn't fit another squad in that location because it would be overstacking. So therefore, technically in that location, if you went squad, machine gun, squad, you would get more firepower. Yes, you have the higher possibility of that gun breaking down, but that might be something that you consider when you remember the non-qualified use of the medium machine gun. It's pretty, breakdown 11 is pretty rough. Then when you go down to 10 and then X11, I mean, we all roll 11s all game long. I know that for a fact. And, but that might be something to consider because that might be able to concentrate so much more firepower, at least in a defensive fire sort of situation. That's something that you would have to evaluate. Most guys double up the crews. And again, the crew's striped just like everybody else. So that's something that you might want to consider, you know. But the choice is yours. Again, you got to deal with the consequences. You know, breakdown 10 is pretty low. I remember playing the old squad leader, and all those Russian LMGs were breakdown 10. Man, you're firing them once, and that's it. It's like a flamethrower. They're gone. They're gone after that. You have no LMGs. You know, LMGs were like a non-factor in all of the old squad leader games because they just broke and just gone. But I was thinking about this the other day based upon the other replays that we were watching, because a lot of guys are just stacking the mediums with the squads. And then they're stacking the, and again, on the flip side of that, right? Where do they put the mortars? They put the mortars with the crews. Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't think it's such a bad thing. Because why? Your 447s are going to be up in everyone's faces, right? Let's say you're firing at a range of 6 or more. Most of the time, these mediums are firing a range of 5 or 6 or 7. 4 hex range isn't that good to be honest with you. It just isn't that good, not compared to the German 4.67s or the American 6.66s. So if you've got the crew in the back, and a lot of times if your mortars, because they're slower to move, they're more likely not necessarily going to be in the front line unless you're having a leader tote those things around, which you damn well should, because those are excellent weapons. They've got smoke, white phosphorus, they've got a decent rate of fire, and everything you're firing at is going to be +1 terrain pretty much anyway, or air bursts at -1. So those are excellent weapons to have. So they could shoot at a range of 1. So that they're unusual in that sort of aspect. Really very well designed for at least the PTO sort of fighting. But yeah, the 228s and the mortars are in the back shooting, and they do have a higher morale, being a more powerful unit. The mortar, you could argue, is more powerful than the machine gun in many facets of the game based upon what it can do. So why not put a stronger unit? And if you had a leader with that unit, that 228 now becomes a 229. So you're probably not going to break that mortar unit firing upon you turn after turn after turn. So, that's something that you might want to take into consideration. I've never thought of it before until watching that replay. It's like, these guys, they got mortars? What the hell is it, mortars? Oh, I said, that could be a possibility where you would use them. That could be a possibility. But, that's something you have to evaluate in how you're performing your plan. If it doesn't fit in your plan, don't do it. Go back to by the way it's quote should be, or do that. Take the risk of the breakdown and see how it effectively kind of comes out for you. You could always repair it, right? You could always repair it when you roll that B10. You could always repair, but just be wary that it's going to be gone more often than not. But same thing with bazookas, same thing with flamethrowers. You're using those just, maybe not as often, but you're still using those pieces of equipment with that same essentially risk of destruction. So you just consider it's a beating machine gun. But just something to note there. I mean, it's just, I know some of you may have noticed this or may not have noticed that, but yeah, this is an increased breakdown. They may not have noticed it, but we don't know, unless he happens to roll like a 10 on an infantry dice roll. And he leaves like 4 residual, something like that. So it's hard to note. Yeah, he's in a mortar with point blank there. Good shots. And again, he still hasn't moved the infantry, his Japanese infantry on the left-hand side. Probably trying to keep the, because he can't reach the, he might be able to. 2, 3, 4, 5. No, probably couldn't. A CX unit and CX infantry unit in close combat versus a motion vehicle. Pretty damn low. You're really not going to get anything but a snake eyes. So in that case, try to stop some of the infantry that just might get off. And then he's moving here. Oh, another one gets popped. And again, an AT gun, because he swiveled. Decent shot on that one up there. Of course, he rolls a 3, a really good roll. And he pops him on a 7 to kill. Just an average kill roll. And of course, he gets ready to fire. Machine gun mouse. And the infantry howitzer, infantry gun had blown up a previous tank. Notice where the infantry are. The infantry is just really kind of back. So that's kind of interesting. I think the next one kind of moves them together. So it's pretty interesting there. Remember, once these infantry break, they're just not going to get off. There's just not enough time. Especially when there's not leaders in a particular situation. It's these Japanese are going to be on you, and if you're broken, they're just going to move adjacent to you, keeping you DM'd. And that's just simple as fact. I mean, you can't stop the Japanese from getting next to your DM units for the most part. And at this point, it's pretty much the infantry turkey shoot and getting these guys over here. All the vehicles are gone. I don't think he got any off. And then the infantry, he engages in close combat here. Those guys, snake eyes. That's pretty nasty. And that's the end of that particular scenario there. Again, he lost his tanks piecemeal. I don't know what turn it was, because up here didn't really keep track of the turn, but obviously the players did. So, should the infantry go directly with it? Maybe the infantry can go in the front and take out the mediums, take out the AT guns, take out the infantry. Do they have time? Don't know. But that might be something to consider here, because it seemed like the infantry was lagging far behind the vehicles. So that's like anything else, you know, infantry support. Imagine if we had, you know, these guys are up here. We've got 3 or 4 tanks in the middle. We've lost 2 of them, right? You know, maybe we need a, you know, CX, a leader, taking some fire just to go after the AT gun. You know, one, he may have to fire a mortar. He may have to fire the medium machine gun at us, because if we get on the AT gun, those guys are going to die, even with these 437s. That's a 2-to-1 in close combat. Plus, he doesn't get to fire. We don't even need to kill him in close combat, right? We just need to tie him up. Once we tie these 2 things up with the infantry, I'm not saying it's easy, but once you find out where these things are, hopefully you won't be losing vehicles left and right. The infantry gun did really well. You know, I think he took out 3 vehicles. I mean, that's pretty damn good. But I think the infantry are difficult to include here, especially when you've got to go through a lot of kunai. So it really kind of funnels the infantry in this, you know, 5-turn scenario. You know, can you move through the kunai? That's a question you have to ask yourself. If you can move the guys moving through kunai, if they're going to be engaging units like the AT gun, at that point, those units are not going to be slated for moving off, right? Obviously, your tanks are going to be the big pointers, but you still could get a good chunk of change for the infantry, like we saw in the other scenario, where the guy at the end game at the top left corner, you know, he positioned his units in a good spot, and they just did an end around on the last defending Japanese unit, and he won with infantry there. So it's really good to see that, yes, you can get infantry off in this particular game. Now let's pop the next one. The next one's going to have, I think, something pretty interesting. Don't remember how effective it was. Let's see. I think it's Artem's game. I think it's this one here. All right. Now, if you could sync on me now, it's I've loaded. And again, look how the defense is slightly different. This is like good, more centralized linear defense, like we had, I think, in the second or third game, the review that we had. And instead of the across, this one's more up. So very interesting that the defenses differ. And again, look how everything's stacked. There's a lot of stuff that's stacked 3, no giant stacks. So where's the machine guns? Where's the mortars? Where's the lights? You know, we don't know. You know, well, the mortars are probably not in this building, nor I don't think they can be fired out of things. But yeah, the mortar's definitely not going to be in the building. Well, hopefully. So let's see how we set up here. Okay. So again, infantry come on. Pretty short, pretty close. CXing. 2 tanks come on the left-hand side. Everybody stays in motion. And he's got a gun way up at his face. To hit a 4, ready to fire 1. He's still got ready to fire regardless of which weapon that is. And then he fires again. Again, I think they should be loose. Maybe not. I'll have to check that rule. All of his tanks are in motion, make him harder to hit. The other gun, again, up in his face. This is a kind of a sweet spot. I think one of the other games had the gun right here, because you got open ground here, and you got open ground to this location over here. And especially if you're dealing with that vehicle, that the truck expenditures, that's probably 5 movement points right there. So that's just essentially just a vehicle in motion, or a moving vehicle plus 2, and then you got the range. So it'd be really easy to hit these truck expenditure vehicles in any open ground. You're never going to have that, you know, few MPs and LOS with those things rolling around. So gets a shock on this unit here. Tries another hit. He got lots of rate of fire, that darn thing. LMG point blank. Again, decent shot. And he mounts his main armament. He's still worth 4 points, so he still has value in the scenario. Infantry advance up. Oh, yes, this is a turn 1 infantry. And it looks like he flips it. Oops. I think he flipped it. I think it's what the single die rolls were. Oh, and he shoots him anyway. It doesn't really matter. Prep fires, destroys him. Moves the mortar back. I guess there was a mortar there. Moves the mortar back. He could probably defend another malfunction weapon. Unfortunately, infantry howitzers on the right-hand side. Again, the infantry haven't come alive in this one. All of his tanks are in motion. Maybe he's gonna see how far his guns can take him before his infantry have to come into play. And then the Dutch infantry again. You got a guy right here. He's coming close to the infantry gun, so this guy takes a shot, and unfortunately the leader breaks and the squad pins, so he can't jump that guy in close combat. Very unfortunate for the Dutch player there. Very unfortunate, because that would have been a good destruction, good kill right there. And again over here, same thing. Now we've got the 7-0 and the 4-3-7s, and of course they get pinned from a fire attack, and that's from the crew. So remember, just because the crew's got the gun, you can always fire the crew instead of the gun, and that's a 4 even shot right there. It's not a bad shot. Plus he could subsequent for his fire, and he could even final protect the fire if he expended multiple points, lots of points, getting there, so on and so forth. Because if he breaks, if he fails his morale check, he's just going to stripe, which doesn't really do anything to him in terms of ability to use the gun. So one tank's trying to make an end around, and he's got those light anti-tank weapons, the medium, mortar, both misses. And this guy blows through there as well, same sort of thing. And again, because this thing is first fired here, these guys are just going to blow by him. Now we have to see how the Japanese are going to react. We've got a large infantry line on the left-hand side. The crew actually kills that one unit, so the crew gets lucky there. He rolls a 3, destroys one of those units jumping close combat, but that's a good idea. Jump in close combat, nullify that unit as best you can. Of course, being up front makes them much more susceptible to close combat far earlier in the game, and can either win the scenario quickly or obviously perhaps even lose the scenario quickly. So here we go. We've got our first Banzai shot up at the top over here. Remember, the defining feature has to be within 8 hexes. These guys are within 8 hexes. Unfortunately, there's lots of kunai in the way, so that might slow these guys up a little bit. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. So I'm not exactly sure if that's because I think this guy started here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, because this guy was at 7 right there, so he had to end. So they're getting close. He could actually advance into close combat, and we've got another Banzai in the bottom part. He's got a double Banzai this turn, and we make it onto that particular vehicle. I'm not sure if he just stopped there. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, he moves the second Banzai unit in that location. So again, we get fired upon, we get striped, we don't care, because his close combat value is going to remain the same as a 3-4-7 striped. He's not a half squad yet, he's still a full squad, just reduced strength. And unfortunately our Japanese squad in the middle got pinned, so he won't be able to jump in close combat. And I'm not sure what this unit's doing up here. Maybe he's dead or something, I don't know. But there'd be no point for him to jump up. Looks like they failed their close combat attacks. -1. What destroyed that? I don't know what destroyed that. Probably the mortar. I'm thinking the mortar. Yeah, looks like the mortar probably destroyed it. That's the only thing I get to see that killed it, or maybe the medium machine gun. I don't see anything marked yet. But again, you see it to hit a 5 to kill a 3. They're not easy kills. When you see these tanks getting destroyed, these are not easy kills. They're very low to kill values. The mortar's slightly better, at least in immobilizing or stunning or shocking the unit. But the machine guns can be quite difficult to do. That guy just strolls off the map. DMs that. That's actually a broken Japanese unit. Imagine that. We did have a disabled armament on this vehicle, so he has to recall, unfortunately. At that point, you probably don't want to repair, especially if you're dealing with an exit victory points. Move that first, second, third, or last. I don't know. Maybe move it last to guarantee you some free points in case he's going to say, hey, I'm just going to fire other units because that unit can't do anything. So you could either move it first because it has fewer victory point value to it, or move it last thinking that, he's just going to save fire for other guys anyway. So he does get 2 vehicles off. Big difference. I think that, I'm not sure. No, that guy wasn't mouthed because that guy had to exit. So he won't be able to try to destroy this vehicle again for that machine gun, because now the machine gun is subject to half firepower, and therefore won't be able to attack the vehicle. It has to maintain its rate of fire or have its initial shot. Now, it doesn't apply to the mortar. Like if you had a mortar, something that could intensify or something like that, a large mortar like the 82s, something like that, you can intensify and try to destroy it. But the machine guns, since they're subject to half firepower, have no anti-tank capability at that point. They can destroy. Well, they don't have unarmored units in SK yet, but that's a different ball of wax. Because you're going on the kill chart. And we'll see if that unit can get off. Infantry at the bottom. Again, these infantry on the bottom trying to swarm these tanks or these anti-tank guns. Too bad those weren't worth victory points. I think it might be interesting. So we do swarm those, and both of those go down at the same time. That one didn't happen in either of the games because most of the guns were in the back. But I think they did their damage early. Another Banzai on the right-hand side. And they're Banzaiing the guy in the front. And that's a good target. I think this is a good target. Why would you want to Banzai the guy in the front, even though you're taking an open ground shot right there? What would be the difference between Banzaiing him up there instead of like, this guy with the LMG or something like that? Or there's a leader down here that's interest. What would be the reason why you would want to Banzai against the front unit versus the two squads over here? There's a couple reasons. I mean, what's the obvious in terms of victory conditions?
Well, the obvious, put a blocking force.
Right.
I mean, now he's got to go around.
Right. And you are subject to 8-2 here, but again, we could afford a stripe. 8-2, likely going to give us a 2 morale check, 1 morale check. Hopefully, it won't kill us. Even if it does CR us, we're still at 237. Then we jump in the location. It's a little bit problematic at that point. But yeah, it gets in front of them. There's a chance that we can kill this guy in close combat. It's going to be 1-to-1 -1, and it's going to be if you go hand to hand, even better. And then you're right, it just creates a blocking force. So these guys now have to swivel around this way and do our machine gun or something like that. So take out the lead unit, see what happens. Could he have gone against the other guys? Sure, more cover, safer. Going this way. Can this and again, can this guy make it off? Does this leader need to be rallied? That's the thing. Even if this leader needs to be rallied to get these units off, and this guy can't get off anyway, then you might consider trying to Banzai the leader. I mean, you could legit from here choose the leader as the Banzai unit and just take the alternate path this way. Or at that point, you could go outside and then come here and only take a 1 point blank shot just to kill the leader. It depends on the game turn. Again, this one doesn't really have a game turn designated in the turn track, but that's what you need to think about is who can get off and kill the guys that can get off. If the top three, if these guys can't get off without the leader, then the leader is the priority, even though he's broken. Because these guys can't get in a position to take out your medium machine gun. If they could, then you might want to protect one of your other assets. But since he can't, they're essentially just in escape mode. Then you want to maintain the possibility of minimizing that attempt of his escaping. So, and the same thing with the guys in the middle. There's no leader here. Do we really need to fire on these guys? We could probably just avoid those and just try and target some of these guys that are lagging behind. Because these guys are going to be moving, 4 movement factors per turn. It might be turn 3 or 4. It's got to be at least turn 3 by now. So those guys just aren't probably going to get off. He does kill that guy in close combat and take a casualty for it. So that's interesting. So good kill. And unfortunately, the tank does get off up top. He missed whatever attack shots he had, and so that's a resolution there. But again, this one here, lots of infantry at the end. Both guns taken out. Early kills on the tanks. He just didn't get any kills after that, except for right here. The very early kills here. I think there might be a kill in here somewhere in here. But yeah. And the other scenario we watched, the guns up front. I mean, the tanks were wiped out quickly. And this is what you have to deal with. Do I put them up front, relying on my rate of fire, my 37, and my infantry to try and take them out? Or do I put them like in the D9? We have some very high successes of guns sort of in the backish area, the back, probably 2/3 of the approach area, very high success rate there, to take on those vehicles as they're escaping past our infantry units. So lots of good different approaches on this one here. Interestingly enough, only one scenario got infantry off. Only one scenario got infantry off. I you know, if you guys are going to play this one again, it would be interesting to see, okay, let me see if I can win by just getting the infantry off, and what will it take to do that? Because you do have the firepower from the vehicles if he's going to try and engage your units when you're like, essentially, instead of mass moving your vehicles off, you can mass move your infantry off and just put a front of vehicles in front of them or next to them. Those are high firepower shots. I mean, you've got an 8 firepower unit, 6 and 4 firepower, and all those are nothing to sneer at when you're taking point blank shots. And at that point, you know, I'm not sure the second turn guys can get on, but I mean, you could stack them and lots of hindrances. So his shots are going to be pretty much ineffective against your guys. And as you see in most of the scenarios, these guys are all separate, right? There aren't going to be a lot of heavy fire group. There's no real big fire group firepower. So you might be able to afford to stack, you know? You might be able to afford to stack to move guys into position, especially if you're running on the right-hand side and he's at your flank. If you break, where are you going to route? You're going to route forward. And that might be something that you could address. If he leaves you an opening, break me, you know, move closer to him so you could break, so then you can move forward, as long as you have those tanks and stuff like that coming behind. You know, at that point, you want to move your tanks last, you know, because his infantry gun, if it's still hidden, is probably going to wait for a tank, right?
Hey Stu, I'm gonna set up a Banzai question while you're talking. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And so if his infantry gun is hidden and you anticipate it being over a particular area, moving your infantry forward, especially, you know, where's this infantry gun here? It's in Kunai. This one was in woods. Those are all accessible locations to your infantry. Sweep them forward at CXing. Who cares? We're just going to bounce off to find out where it is. Now, essentially at that point, you know, if let's say this was our move and we bounce into this infantry unit and bounce back here and our tanks have yet to move, you know, at that point, you know, some of our tanks that are super fast, do we need to move them? No, not at all. The fast tanks, we don't need to move at all. The slow one, probably, you know, you might want to give him a shot there. Maybe not. Depends on you. But at that point, you don't have to worry about it, because he's going to have a ton of units going to be jumping this guy in close combat. Now, your vehicles can cruise on by that guy, because we know this infantry can destroy tanks. And as long as you know you've got time to get those vehicles off, there's no, I mean, let's say you haven't moved him on yet. Let's say this was turn 1. You had a guy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You moved a leader with a squad up there, and you found his infantry gun. Hell, you could just move your tanks over here on this side of the building. You know, this is a solid building. This is not a hut. This is a building. So he won't be able to see you here. Just move your tanks up over here. You can stack them up like there, and that will give you a much better chance to move them next turn, because, you know, it's -1 per tank that you're next to. And then you can definitely get it rolled, because this will be gone at the end of the turn, even CX'd. He's either going to be gone or close combat. So that will be nullified. And he's going to have to react. He's going to have to move some infantry to get that gun up and running. And that might not be part of his plan. You know, you might really take him out of his plan at that point. So I think you have the infantry to set them up for that. Through the kunai, they're going to be moving really slowly, but your infantry can definitely sweep the palm trees. You know, they can definitely sweep the palm trees. I'd love to see that. That's the sort of attack that we really didn't see too much of. And just to be different, if I play this scenario, I would probably just try to do that to see how far I can go, you know, and maybe get your tanks into a position where they could be like, these guys are 16 movement points. These guys are 18, right? So get them into a position that super late game, play for the late game, where they can move off in one turn, right? So if he does have his AT gun up here, once he first fires that thing, once he misses that rate of fire, he's done. He has one turn. He has one movement phase to stop all of our vehicles. So that minimizes that AT gun's ability to be able to tag all our vehicles. And we don't need all of our vehicles off. We only need like 3. So even if he is in a prime position, that our tanks are like hiding behind the tree line here. I mean, if we're here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, we can be stopped behind this wall for 4 turns, except for here, he'd have to be 18, and then make a break for it, even with this guy pointing at us. So hopefully, obviously, rate of fire 3, powerful weapon, but, that's something you might consider if your infantry haven't gotten to the point where they've swept areas. But you've got a ton of infantry. They've got to be useful for something, right? I mean, to me, it just seems like the infantry haven't done a lot. I mean, there's a gap over here you could run through, which isn't bad. And there's a gap over here, which one of the players had run through, and he got, like 2.5 squads off or something like that. So that makes up for a tank or, a decent amount. You're not getting, obviously, it's probably not designed for you to get all the infantry off, because otherwise it would just be a broken scenario. You've got like 8 or 9 vehicles and a whole shitload of infantry. So my question would be then is like, what exactly what are the infantry for if they really have no chance of getting off? And hopefully I can try and figure what that out. That's the question that I have in my mind when I'm looking at this scenario, because it looks to be dominated by vehicles simply just busting ass off the line, and they either get through, or they all get annihilated. That's what it seems to be. And the infantry, at least the Dutch infantry, happen to be just secondary. So I think once you, especially the AT gun, I think the infantry gun you can, quote, ignore, but once an AT gun pops up, then I would definitely take as much infantry as possible and haul ass and try to just take that thing out for whatever. You got no smoke, so time to take that thing out, and then you probably got it home free at that point. Maybe that's what they're for. I don't know. So it would be interesting. All right, whatever. What you got? What you got, Craig?
Okay, so me and MGT sort of went through something similar today. So these are Banzaiing up here, and it really doesn't matter the residuals or when these guys shot or anything.
Okay.
But things happen, and then he makes it to the target hex.
Okay.
Now, first of all, can this guy shoot in here before anything happens?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Because that's a moving unit, right?
Right.
Yeah. As long as he's got LOS, okay. As long as even if he's final fired, he could shoot in there, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And will he affect those other allied units?
No.
Why?
Because he's just shooting at the moving enemy.
Right, because it's not melee, because they're not in melee.
Right. That's right. Yeah. They're not in melee
not in
yet.
Melee, and that's key. That's key.
Right. Okay, so at this point, do the 2 groups exchange triple point blank fire, or is there some other shots that are taken first?
What phase is this?
Well, it's the movement phase, and the Japanese just moved in.
Right, the Japanese cannot attack in the movement phase. The Dutch could triple point blank fire against them, and since they entered their location, they have to at least fire on them. And in this instance, the guy on the bottom is going to be final protective firing. The guy above him will be subsequent first firing, and the top guy will be first firing. So let's say just pick the top guy. Can he fire first because they moved into the square or the hex, and then fire triple point blank? They all would have to fire. They all would have to fire, because that would be a mandatory fire group at that point. They all have to fire because they have a triple point blank fire shot available to them, and since they are all infantry, they must combine, if possible, as a combined fire group. At that point, you couldn't separate your shots out.
let me change it to this. Now, can they first fire at the Japanese for moving into the hex,
Right.
and then triple point blank fire?
Your first fire will be triple point blank fire.
Okay, so once you're in the same hex, each side shoots once.
It depends. This is open ground, right?
Yeah, we are in a jungle, Craig.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's right.
there were 2 movement factors, and you had first fired against me when I was adjacent, and then you subsequent first fired on my first movement, and triple point blank final protective fired on the second.
Okay. Does that sound good, Stu?
So you were like over here,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were in jungle. Sorry. Yeah.
and then the Japanese move here, and then you first fire at that point. You
Yep.
first fire here at 16.
One of the units did.
Oh, one of the units fired at 8-2. So
Or did 2 fire and 1 fire at half strength? I can't remember. Anyway.
Yep. But in any event, the Japanese didn't scratch them.
oh,
So
okay.
then they moved into the target hex.
Yeah, and so then you move here. So if only one unit fired there, now since they moved into it, they must fire at least once. They must fire at least once. Even though he expended 2 movement factor in there, he doesn't have to fire twice. He could simply just fire once, but he must fire because that is a triple point blank fire situation. So the firepower in this case, if you have the top unit that is not marked and the bottom unit that is marked, the top unit would have 12 firepower and the bottom unit would have 6 firepower because it's tripled in halves. It's 12. It's halved because he's first fired. He's subsequent first firing.
Right.
So the bottom unit would have 6 plus 12. It's 16 firepower. That's going to be infantry moving in the terrain, non-assault movement. So in this case, assuming it's light jungle, +1, -1 for non-assault movement. So that'd be a 16 even. Whatever, let's say nothing happens. But because now this guy is flipped over to final, and the first guy is marked first. Now you can choose to final protective fire on those units, or on the second one, and that will still be tripled and halved. In this case, it would be 6 firepower from each unit, and the bottom unit would be subject to a morale check based on the rule.
So you're tripling and halving every time.
Well,
in your hex.
If you're marked with the first fire or final fire counter. If you're not marked, it's straight up triple.
Okay.
Right. Now, if neither one of them fired, and they entered that location, and he said, now I'm going to blast you, because he knows he's going to have a first and second shot, which if you do the math, sometimes you might want to wait for that to happen. You might be a little bit more successful. Against the Japanese, you might want to fire earlier simply because breaking them really doesn't do anything. Right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't think I should have shot at him at all. I should have just let him come into the hex. But.
Right. Well, the Japanese, most of the time, you want to reduce their strength before they get to you. Now, if these were German units, right, or Russian units charging you, then you could possibly wait for them to get into your hex, because now you've got a 24 chart, even. Now, you could probably get a straight-up KA on those guys. But a 4 morale check on these units right here isn't really going to do anything to them. This guy's going to, let's say they all fail, right, and the leader doesn't die, right? He just gets flipped, He's just got, it's just, where's it? How does that even fly? It doesn't even flip. These guys will just simply flip. There's a stripe. This guy will become a half squad, and this guy will simply become wounded. Do they lose much firepower? Not much at all. They have 8 firepower. It's still 1-to-1 against you in close combat.
Right.
So even though you fired at a 24 chart and got a 4 morale check on him, he's still getting the same 1-to-1 attack on you. He would have had a 1-to-1 anyway, because even if he had 2 full squads at 4 and the 3, 4, 7, that's still 11. That's still 1-to-1. 12 with the leader. I guess it would be 3-to-2 at that point. But to be honest with you, he didn't lose much. But if you fired at him, especially if they're stacked, this is you're asking for trouble when you stack, so you kind of want to spread them out when you're Banzai. But let's say you're moving at him anyway. Like this. Let's just say that's the case. Let's say this guy isn't wounded. And you want to move here. Well, you might want to consider firing 8 firepower. 8 minus 2 is pretty good. You're looking for morale checks. All you need is morale checks. And let's say you get a couple stripes. Say you just stripe these guys. Right? And then you fire here. Another 8 minus 2. You're subsequent for firing at this point. Right? Now this is where the question might come in. Maybe this unit needs to fire. But if you final fire here, what's going to happen when he continues to move? Because he's getting you there, right? These 347s are entering your hex regardless what happens to your attack unless you KIA them. The 237 might not. Let's say you fire 8 minus 2 here, breaks the unit down here, stripes this guy, which essentially makes him half squad, and nothing happens to the other guy, and the leader dies. For some reason. He rolls a morale check, wound done. Now these guys continue to move. They enter your hex. Now you have to final protective fire against them, right? So that would be 12, right? Even, let's say you roll an 8 on your result, right? Both your guys break, and let's say he fails all his morale checks. This guy's broken. Here, where the hell is he? Why can't that unit break? Oh, it's like the second one. And then this guy just becomes a house squad. So he still has a unit in that location. What's going to happen in the advanced fire phase here? Then the Japanese units, because you're done, you're broken. The Japanese, he gets to fire tripled and halved, which is going to be 3, which is going to be 2 firepower, 2 plus 1. And then you have to route out of the location. Well, he has to route first because it's not a melee, so he could route. So he has to route. So he just routes wherever. Let's say these guys just route over here for whatever reason. And then you have to route 2, 4. Let's just say you go there because these guys aren't there. Then he gets to advance and he can actually just follow you wherever you routed to practically. So that's how the Japanese can get to location, even though, you know, something happened. Now, if you didn't fire until they got there and you fired a 24 chart, now 24 chart's pretty impressive, but you'd have to roll a 4 for a 1 KIA. So what happens with a 1 KIA? One unit's eliminated and the other guys are broken. Well, if you didn't fire upon them until they entered your hex, you're just going to stripe them. Right? All of those 447s will just be striped. There'll be 347s. And one of them might be dead. The half squad might survive. But whatever, he's still going to engage you at really good odds at close combat. But in this way, at least, even though you broke, right? Now, if you wanted to tie him up, that might be something you want to do. Hand-to-hand clawbat's pretty deadly. Just saying. But if you want to tie those guys up, especially if you got a whole bunch of guys in there, then let them jump in your hex, and you might want to kill. You might be able to kill those units off. Again, it's all situational. And are these units key to your defense? Maybe you want to weaken them before they get there because you got the other guys got coming up, or maybe they don't exist and you need to keep that leader. Maybe you need to kill that leader. You know, if you need to kill the leader, which I would want to do pretty much at all cost, especially if they're Banzaiing all the time, because once the leaders are gone, so you can't Banzai anymore. And so, and that's a key, and that's where a lot of times the more residual you drop down, especially if he had other units behind him, if he's only got 1 stack, you know, the residual placement's not going to do anything because he's not going to move through it. You know, any other Banzai units, but just take a look at it, play it out in both situations. Say, well, if I fire it here and I roll a 7, what's going to happen? 1 morale check, a couple guys fail, you know, because his morale's going to be higher. His morale's going to be 8, so 1 morale check, and he doesn't pin, so he's probably going to get to you. So the more shots to possibly keep him rolling those dice, and eventually he's going to fail even with 9 morale. Keep him rolling those dice, and that's the key. Is it's like berserk units, right? You got to be for those that play ASL, you got berserk unit. He's got 10 morale. It's like, why am I going to waste 20 units firing at him? You know, if he's only going to be moving 2 hexes and jumping into my spot. You know,
well, that's what he had. He had a 10 minus 1 leader with the Banzai, so he was a 10 morale.
Yeah, and so it was crazy, but I figured out it was a 9-1 leader, but his morale goes up by 1, and then I stacked everybody, all 3 squads under the 9-1, so their morale went up twice.
Right, 1 for the Banzai, 1 for the leader.
Yeah, so I got a 10 leader and a 9 squads, so they're like impervious.
Yeah, pretty strong, pretty hard to get there. And that's pretty much why the Americans are the ones fighting the Japanese, because they've got lots of firepower to be able to deal with that 9 morale. You know, it brings it back down to kind of normal levels. But interestingly enough, there's cases where you might have some conscript units, and I've been learning this by playing the Long March series. Is, conscript units have 3 movement factors. Green, conscript, whatever the case may be, 3 movement factors. Well, the easiest way to get them somewhere is to put them in a Banzai. Yeah, the morale only goes up to 7, but they don't pin, and they have 8 movement factors. So essentially, you're giving them 2.5 movement. You're giving them 2.5 movement phases in one Banzai, and the enemy has to fire at them all, as a simultaneous unit. So they are going to break. Some guy's going to break, obviously, but it will draw some of his fire, and it will get those conscripts up where they might be able to engage someone in close combat, especially if they're Banzai. They just enter that location, and they don't have to worry about the morale once they're in close combat. At least against those units, somebody could fire into the melee and have an effect upon it. But you got to your destination. Maybe you just need to capture a building, run through some buildings on the way and kind of do that sort of thing and capture those buildings where you're going. Well, I guess, yeah, you're still good ore, yeah. So that's something, or maybe you can't reach them, right? Maybe it's through a whole bunch of kunai, like we saw over here on the left-hand side, right, where this 1447 couldn't quite get there. Plan your Banzais that way, Let's say you're 8 hexes away, I'm going to rush right at you. Well, oops, I got to run through 4 or 5 buildings. You still got there a lot faster. You're not CX'd, right? You're not CX'd. And you're 4 to 5 hexes through either grain, building, or whatever the case may be. It's just tough terrain. Up and down, over a hill, go up a hill, down a hill, in woods, right? So let's say if you Banzai up into a level 1 terrain that has a woods or building in it, well, that's 4 movement factors. That's a 1 hex movement for your units most of the time. Well, if you're Banzaiing, that's only half. So then you could move 2 more building hexes on top of that terrain feature, or 4 more open ground hexes. And sometimes just use it for movement. You don't necessarily have to, go inside and kill 50 people. Just if you have it arranged, you could actually just use it to move your units to the left side or not, and then without CXing. So, but it's all about keeping track and organizing your movement, your defense, such that you could Banzai to one of them. I mean, this guy right here, he had all 3 units, units in this location and a leader. He could Banzai left, he could Banzai right. He gave himself the opportunity to essentially reach either destination. So, or forward for that matter. I mean, obviously he can go forward, Banzai forward. So he had his essentially strike force ready to go. And then he had, random other leaders that were smaller Banzai groups, but yet were still semi-effective, right? So some neat use of Banzai in this one here. At least we saw some good Banzai attacks. He got to those locations. Most of his guys got there. Didn't end up destroying anyone, I don't think, with the Banzai. It's still hard to do, right? You got to roll those low rolls when they're in motion. That's a simple fact. I mean, that's all there is to it. But hey, it's better than nothing. It's better than infantry firing at, a vehicle driving by that you can't do anything to. The Banzai is your anti-tank defense. So I was glad to see at least a couple players achieve a Banzai statuses, whether they were effective or not. It's good to get used to that and experience that, because doing it once or twice, it's like playing with vehicles. If you're doing it once or twice, like is it effective? Is it not? I think doing vehicles is actually probably easier than Banzaiing, because you're not moving up to 6 to 10 characters at one time, especially if you're like the Russians. Well, the Japanese, the SK are the ones that are Banzaiing. You could do 2 units for that matter, but the more the merrier. It makes it funner. And so at that point, watching and viewing the terrain, okay, if everyone is linear, if everyone's in a line and they're charging up a hill, let's say into jungle, then it's going to be 4 and 4. So essentially your Banzai is going to move 2 hexes. But if it was a linear Banzai, then they'd all jump up at the hill at the same time, which is the key, the timing of the move. Then they all would jump up and enter that terrain or at least up on the hill, so nobody else has to do that the next turn, next impulse. Then they expend 4 movement factors first, and then they can continue on once they're on top of the hill. So that's the one trick about the Banzai, is understanding how the movement of the terrain will affect your Banzai. And sometimes you'll screw up and you'll end up short. It's like, oh shit, now all your guys are in open ground, he's got a whole bunch of machine guns or whatever, and he just guns your guys down. And you know, a lot of people complain, oh, Banzai is garbage, it's terrible. Well, the Banzai is effective, it's the execution is the issue. Just like anything, any attack that you have to execute it properly. And if you I've done it many times. I Banzai'd a couple times, and about every other time I screw up a guy moving, and I'll move him into a spot where I don't want him to, because he's expending 2 movement factors to go into this woods or building hex or something like that I couldn't avoid. And everybody else is going to end up a hex short. And guess what? I'm right in front of the guy, and now I have to advance it in close combat, and all my guys are considered lax. And yeah, you don't want to be ambushed in close combat. We know that. And it's just not good. It's not good for the health of your troops. But just make sure you plot out, and it could take some time. And what will be easiest for you guys to do, instead of actually having to do that into a particular game, is taking your logs of your Japanese games or anything else, any other game you have, and just assume they're Japanese and you can Banzai, and say, okay, I want to Banzai in this situation in my game that I played earlier. And it doesn't really have to be a Japanese scenario. It could be any scenario. Say, just have the same qualifying things of a normal Banzai charge, and say, okay, I'm going to Banzai these guys. What would be the best way for me to get there? You know, and just practice it in your other games that you have logs of. You guys have tons of logs, and just take a look at it, or take a look at these logs. These guys have pulled down here. Say, okay, these guys are here. I want to Banzai to the left and kill those troops. I want to Banzai get to the leader. What's the best way to get to the leader? And then just act like you're the other guy and practice a couple defensive fire shots and see if you can get there. You know, with Japanese, you probably will. With other nationalities, you're probably going to have a lot of guys broken. You know, that's just the way it is. But that's what makes the Japanese Japanese. Is they could fail 3 morale checks and still have a half squad on top of you, jumping into hand-to-hand combat. And hand-to-hand combat pretty much makes the half squad pretty damn powerful. You know, a half squad at 1 to 4 odds, you know, needs a 5 for casualty reduction. You know, you add a leader on top of that, or a -1, maybe he ambushed you. No, he wouldn't be ambushing. He could be ambushing you if he was short and then jumped in close combat. But hand-to-hand combat's essentially a -2 to your dice roll. For all intents and purposes, it's a -2 to your dice roll. And it's pretty powerful. So yeah, that's what I would definitely do, is just practice those things, especially because it's a tool of the Japanese have. And if you're never Banzaiing with the Japanese, then you're just giving up a big piece of their pie, big piece of their strength. You know, mobility is the best thing that I love about it. Is it gets lots of movement units moving and lots of ground. They cover lots of territory. And that in and of itself is very powerful. You know, you don't necessarily have to kill anything. Just get halfway there, and then you can deal with it later. And then if you just want to fire, you fire later. You know, not every game you have to Banzai, but just know that it's one of those tools that you guys can use in your arsenal of your OB. As long as you know what tools are available in your OB, it's up to you to how you want to use them. You don't have to use them all the time. Again, like the MMGs. Do you have to put the MMGs for the crews? No, not at all. You're risking something if you don't, but maybe that's part of your game plan.
Yeah, it's Cody. So I'm pretty new to the group here, and you've been helping me out in some side messages. I was just wondering, the Japanese mortars in this case, and mortars in general, with all of that hindrance, and usually they have a 7 to hit. Find them so, and then they only have a 2 on the IFT. I find them kind of useless against infantry. In this particular case, that placement in the middle, I don't know what hex it is, like W8 something. It just seems like no matter what, it's going to have a +2 hindrance to hit. And
Right.
I don't know. Maybe is there am I missing something about their effectiveness or
Well, this is basically the complaint that everybody has about, light mortars. You go on a rate of fire tear, you get 7 shots, and you don't even break the squad, okay? Because you're rolling on the 2 chart, and you roll like, oh yeah, I got a 3 to hit, 11, 3 to 4, 10, whatever, and yeah, but
Use it for smoke and
yeah,
W
mortars
and
certainly
Willie
for
P.
smoke. Yeah, you certainly want smoke, white phosphorus. Those are certainly pretty good, but
they
you know,
have their
but
ammo
certainly
short?
firing into the jungles will be -1.
Yep.
So it'll be 2 -1s because there'll be air bursts. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. Certainly covering open ground. Hey, probably don't want to take a 2-shot, 2 even. In open ground under any circumstance. I mean, you're just gonna, especially if you're playing me, because I'll roll 11s without a moment's hesitation. But
I think in the game I was in, we played wrong today, and we shot the mortars in advanced fire. But I don't think you can do that, can you?
not if they moved.
Right, not if they moved. Okay. Yep.
Well, and one thing to consider, that's a great point, Cody, right?
Yep.
Right. It's one good point, Cody, is especially with the Japanese mortar, I think the 2 rate of fire is a balance case simply because they have white phosphorus and smoke.
Correct. Yeah.
So if there was a rate of fire 3, I think the weapon would just be completely out of the world
better.
broken. But which I didn't see actually in the 5 scenarios here, unless I'm mistaken. The Japanese, just like you said, can put himself in a position where he could fire white phosphorus at one of the stacks of particular units, whether it be a tank or an infantry stack, and that would generate at least a morale check. And obscurement on return fire. So that's another morale check gaining, and that's much easier. That's a guaranteed morale check. And that's just with it to hit. If you hit, it's a morale check, so you don't have to roll any resolution whatsoever. It's straight up an effect. And the other thing, especially with the rate of fire 3 mortars, like your German one, all the other crappy ones, the American mortar is actually very effective because it fires on the 4 chart. But
Yeah.
not that you plan for it, but when you do, when you critical hit with a mortar, which only occurs on a Snake Eyes, it will double your base firepower. So it doesn't double 2 to 4; it doubles from your 50 firepower, from your 50 millimeters. In this case, 50 millimeters. It goes to 12 firepower.
Yeah.
So it goes from essentially 2 to 12 chart, and that's like the Christmas gift you might get. And shit dies at that point, especially if you're firing in the woods. Well, there's a long but hopefully useful guide of Dutch trucks and a review and replay analysis on that. We've got a couple questions thrown in there as well. So, add some questions in here, or maybe join the next scenario of the month. It's listed on Scenario Archive. It's got the ASL Scenario of the Month, and it also has the ASK Scenario of the Month. I think N463 is March's Scenario of the Month. Now the recording of this one is the 10th. So you got plenty of time to get that one in. If you're interested in submitting and contributing to the community and getting, just showing examples of play, if you just have a rule and you show one specific area of a rule, but don't take the entire rest of the scenario in context, it's just an example in the rule book. You really need to see examples in live action play, and you'll see here. And the thing is about the examples is you've got other things to worry about during the game instead of that one specific example. The point that we're trying to make is you're playing the game out here, and when that example comes up during the game of play, you need to be able to recognize it to take advantage of it. Starting from here and working out doesn't work that way because you're playing the scenario. You're not playing it per unit. So it's really easy to lose track of what a unit can do and things like that. That's just typical ASL play. That's what brings a lot of fun into it. Can you remember these little things? Do I want to move him first, or do I want to fire him? And it's like, you always forget to fire a machine gun or a mortar or something like that. So during the game is much more different. Executing your game plan is much more different than just talking about it. It's like armchair quarterback, right? So we're kind of armchair quarterbacking it here so that your next game we can go into, better execution, better recognition, more importantly, better recognition of what the scenario entails. And so the more you recognize, the more you can react, the more you can plan for. And that's as simple as that, to be honest with you. So the more files we have, the more information we have, because you might have something that's extremely important that a lot of other players don't really know about. Oh, I could do this little thing over here, and it really helps me a lot in my games. And stuff like that, very common questions lead to very complex answers. So again, you've seen some of the questions here, relatively simple questions that lead into deep discussion. All right, thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.